Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Mormon Stories podcast. I'm your host, Dr. John DeLynn. It is April 29th, 2022, and we are super duper excited to have with us in studio Jillian Orr. Hey, Jillian.
Hello, my friends.
Thanks for joining us.
I'm stoked. Super excited.
So for those of you who don't know who Jillian Orr is, in the great tradition of BYU graduations, a week or two ago, when she was at BYU Provost's graduation, she had some rainbow material sewn into her graduation gown by her sister. And when she is like on stage, Jumbotron's active, camera flashes to her. She flashes the rainbows as a way to show LGBTQ support, but also to come out to the world as gay or bisexual. And of course, that's a big deal because BYU, as many of you know, has really struggled with its policies and its acceptance of LGBTQ students, with its honor code, with the law of chastity, and just with its support of LGBTQ students. And of course, we'll put in our show notes our interview with Matt Easton, who was the valedictorian who came out as gay during his graduation speech. We shared that. And of course, we also have reviewed Elder Jeffrey R. Holland's Musket Talk, where he basically calls on BYU faculty and staff to pick up their muskets and defend the church against, I don't know, LGBTQ wokeism. I'm not sure exactly how to describe that, but those are a couple past episodes that will give you some context for today. But for those of us who are BYU graduates, including myself, my wife and I, Margie, met at BYU. We always sing Rise and Shout when Cougar comes out. I did not plan that. That was just totally.
That was good. You got to trademark that. That's good.
And of course, we are joined by the brilliant, the heartfelt, the insightful Jen Camp. Hey, Jen.
Hi, everybody. Good to be
you
here
feeling
again.
better? You were a little sick. You feeling better?
A little bit better today. Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Jen comes in, whether she's well or sick. She's just always reliable and dependable. Thanks for coming.
You're welcome.
All right. So, yeah. And by the way, Jillian's story is national news. Jillian, do you want to tell us which media outlets you've already spoken with?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I started to create a list because I was starting to lose them. I've interviewed with CNN. I've done People Magazine. I've talked with ABC, NBC. I've every news article except for Deseret News in Utah. Surprise, surprise. Right.
Yeah.
I've met with some newspaper articles in Boston. I've had some from Chicago. So just a handful of them. I mean, Teen Vogue is reaching out to me, and we're setting something up this week. So it's been busy. It's been a little bit busy.
I love it. All right. Well, the purpose of Mormon Stories, and I'm imagining you're going to be relatively new to Mormon Stories. We've been around 18 years, but that's a little bit shorter than you've been alive, I'm guessing. Anyway, what we love to do is long form. So you've talked to a lot of people, maybe for brief amounts of time, but we do long form, and we do, a Mormon focus. So what we just want to do is hear your Mormon story as it culminates to today. How does that sound?
Sounds great. It is a Mormon story indeed. So
all right.
I got that ready.
Okay. And we are live streaming. So those of you on Facebook or YouTube, please do share your comments and questions, and we'll do our best to integrate them. Also, I want to do a little mini series on recent BYU graduates. So I've already put out a feeler, but I would love to do, in the tradition of like my Losing the Lamanites series, where we interviewed Native Americans who had lost their faith or left the church, or were still in it, and our series on leaving Mormon missions early, which we did, which I'm really proud of. I would like to just interview 5 or 6 recent BYU graduates of either BYU Provo, Idaho, or Hawaii. So if you qualify, and I'm not looking for people who graduated 5 or 10 years ago, if you graduated just a couple weeks ago and you want to talk about your faith journey as a BYU student, I invite you to reach out at MormonStories@gmail.com or DM me through Instagram or Facebook. But anyway, where does your Mormon story begin, Jillian?
The day that I was born.
Well, probably in the
1990.
pre-existence, right?
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that
Okay.
part. Oh, let's go way back then. I've been born and raised very, very religious. I had very involved parents, 6 siblings. So there's 7 of us total. And I have been very ambitious in the church and very proactive. Even when I was in Young Women's, I asked the bishop if I could teach primary. I was like, I want to do that. That sounds fun. And I asked my Young Women's leader, I was like, can I teach a full Young Women's lesson? Can I try it? And part of it is because when something scares me, I want to run at it. I want to face it head on, and I just want to run right at it, because that's how I work with things that scare me. And so public speaking scared me. And so I was like, let's do this. And so I was teaching, I was a substitute for primary, and I got to teach it when I was like 14 years old. I taught lessons, and I became an institute teacher actually in my, after my mission. They called me to be an institute teacher. I went on a mission to Oregon. I actually served in the temple. I served in the temple for about 2 years or so. So I was very ambitious and very involved. Every ward that I moved into, I would go up to the bishop and I would say, hey, if somebody cancels and you don't have someone to speak that day, call me. I'll do it that morning. Like, you tell me and I'm there. And I just had this very involved, ambitious, like, drive and passion for it.
Let's talk about your childhood as a entree into kind of that later stuff. So 7 kids. Wow.
Yeah.
I'm imagining you were raised in Utah, but tell us what your Mormon family was like as you were a little kid and a kid growing up. Whatever you want to share, just about the traditions or, what Mormonism meant to you and your family, and how it was manifested. Family prayer, scripture study, family evening. Anything you want to share.
Yeah. And
where were you in birth order?
I'm 5th of 7.
Okay.
So I'm clearly a middle child. I like to shake things up, get attention, and ruin family photos. So I was in the middle of 7 kids, and we were very, very, like, church was our full world. It was our life. Every morning we had prayers, we had scriptures, we had a devotional, we memorized all the articles of faith. My parents were very, very religious, and that was our whole life. Everything revolved around our spirituality and religion, and with our relationship with God. And so I was raised in it, which I am very grateful for, because I do have a very strong relationship with God. And that has played into my journey, and it has played into my realizations, is that I was raised from early on that I could get answers from God, and I did have a relationship with him, and that if I just asked, he would tell me. And so, all of my siblings, I watched them serve missions. I watched them, have prestigious positions in the church growing up. And it was a good environment, though. Like, I had positive relationships with my bishops. I had positive relationships with my leaders, and I felt very loved and supported in my raising of my home ward. I was born and raised in Farmington, Utah. I'm a first-generation Utard. My mom came from New York.
Utard?
Yeah. Mom came from New York. Dad came from Canada. And so they met at BYU.
Nice.
And I remember as a kid, I told my mom that I was going to be her first kid to graduate from BYU. And when I got older—
What about your older sibs?
No, they didn't get accepted. And they had better grades.
But you didn't know that at the time.
No. And they didn't get accepted because they even had better grades than me. But
they all wanted to. Your older 4 siblings all wanted.
I want to say all of them applied for it. So
Okay.
yeah.
All right. So you're kind of a prophetess a little bit.
Just a bit.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was the dream. Everyone's like, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I was like, I want to be a mission president's wife. That's what I want to be. Because he deals with all the issues, and I get to travel and speak and deal and like help, young adults. So.
Farmington's an intense sort of hotbed of Orthodox Mormonism, as I understand it.
Yeah.
There's like Rexburg is like the most intense Mormon region in the world, maybe Rexburg, Idaho. And then it's probably like Utah County, like
Davis
Provo.
County. is
Oh,
very
I've
big.
heard that about Davis County.
Yeah.
Is Farmington Davis County?
Yep.
Yeah. So I'd say Davis County, Utah County, and freaking Rexburg. It doesn't get is much more intense than that, right?
Definitely. No, definitely.
So like
not.
what percentage of your neighborhood, like 3 streets would be your ward basically? What percentage would have been Mormon, do you think?
Oh, I would say 99%. And we knew who were not. We all knew who was not, and we were taught that, and it was interesting. We were taught that like those who were not, like, they just had a different spirit about them. And we felt weird around them because there's a different spirit. But like we knew which of our neighbors were not members.
Do you remember primary growing up? Like I was like you in terms of like, I want to talk, I want to sing. Like I got into primary. I loved the primary songs and I loved any chance I got to speak. So talk about your primary experiences if you want.
The primary experiences I remember were shaking things up. My teacher would go get something from the library and then my friend and I would jump out the window. I remember I had a teacher who I didn't love her lessons. And so I remember if I could come up with a doctrinally challenging question, she would go off on a rant and I didn't have to listen to the original lesson that she had planned. And so I remember asking these questions or like getting them on a rant of something else because I didn't like where they were going. But I remember challenging things even when I was young. I remember asking questions of like, well, what about this? And what about this doctrine? How does this work? And they loved it because I was very ambitious and I'd ask a lot of questions, and I'd want to be very involved. But I just remember my earliest memories of primary was that I would like to shake things up and I'd like to get reactions out of people, but I was still very involved. Like I didn't want to do it in a mean way. I wasn't trying to be disrespectful. I just liked to challenge things. I like to question things.
All right. And do you remember your favorite primary songs? Do you have a top 2 or 3? Or was music primary songs not a big deal for you?
No, music was very big in my home.
Oh, okay.
We sang a primary song every single morning.
Oh, wow.
In my home. Music is very important to my mother. That was her degree actually, was in music.
Oh, at BYU?
Yeah.
That's intense.
Yeah, it is. It's good stuff though. I mean, a lot of my siblings are very musical and it's something we all very much love, but that's where I'm like, do I have a favorite one?
Okay, pick a couple you love. Do you remember the I like to look for rainbows?
I do remember that one.
Or if you don't, Carolyn Pearson's, if you don't walk as most people do.
No, that one's annoying.
Some people walk. It's about inclusivity.
I know it is. Doesn't mean you got to love a tune. Love a message. Doesn't mean I need to love a tune.
Sorry, Carolyn Pearson.
Much love still. No, can't say I have a favorite one off the top of my head. It's been a while.
Okay. No, that's fine.
No, Book of Mormon Stories.
You like that one?
Like that one.
Even though it's completely like
super racist.
Super
racist. Yeah. I loved being the Indian though. I was all a fan of that. But now I'm like, oh, okay. Yes.
Do you remember like giving talks in primary? Like not so much?
Not so much.
Okay, that's fine. All right. And your family did the family prayer, family evening kind of scripture study stuff?
Yeah. Family evening, scripture studies, every morning. Yeah, we were at church every single week. It wasn't, even on vacations, all 3 hours. You find it, we go. Like it just what life was.
So an Orthodox Mormon family.
Very much so, yes.
Okay. So as you're going into, my LGBTQ research at at Utah State showed that for LGBTQ Mormons, they started to notice their attraction to the same gender or sex. It was around 13 for boys and around 15 for girls or women. As you were entering into kind of that adolescent stage, tell us what your experience was in terms of starting to feel attractions to the extent that you're comfortable.
Yeah, definitely. That's actually a pretty accurate statistic. I haven't heard that one. So my earliest memory of having same-sex attraction, I want to say I was close to 8 years old.
Oh,
Yeah, pretty early. And it was a dream I had. And this is like so embarrassing, but I think it's so funny at the same time that I'm like, just embrace it. I had a dream that I was marrying Reese Witherspoon
ooh.
of all people. And I thought it was so funny, but I remember in the dream, I had these emotions and I was getting married and it was exciting. And I remember waking up and feeling so much shame that I was like, oh my gosh, I shouldn't feel this. I shouldn't want to marry a woman. I shouldn't want, and I need to find this, but I wrote in my journal about it that I said, I will never have these feelings and I will never pursue these feelings because I know that this is wrong and I shouldn't ever have those feelings. So that was my very first earliest experience. And then in my teen years, it was about 14 or 15, I had attraction for somebody else, for a peer that another, a friend of mine.
In high school or middle school?
No, it was middle school.
Okay.
It was right in between. It was middle school into high school.
Okay.
And I had this attraction to this other girl that was very, very, very strong for me. And it created a lot of cognitive dissonance for me. And it got to a point that I actually cut off the relationship because I saw what it was and I knew that it was evil and that it was wrong, that I couldn't pursue those feelings. And so I cut off that relationship. And
Like the friendship.
Yes, the friendship. And it was so painful. And so like, it was such a painful experience for me that I ended up buying a dog. That I bought this dog that was like, that she was there for me when I was experiencing this pain of denying who I was. And so that was like my earliest, like the second significant experience that I had.
I can tell you're starting to feel emotional about that.
Definitely.
Because it was just a sad time, or?
Because it was painful to deny something it was and to villainize it, to make it evil. That was painful early on to deny something.
15. Yeah, turn it off, as the Book of Mormon musical says. Just turn it off like a light switch.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, and it was those years that I didn't even understand it until now that I've like come out and I've been talking about it, that I realized I had this belief, not that someone told me, but that it was the culture of what was taught in the church, that as long as you didn't act on these feelings, you weren't homosexual, right? As long as as long as you don't drink alcohol, you're not an alcoholic. And so as long as I didn't act on those feelings, I wasn't homosexual. And so that's how I thought about it for the longest time, even into my adult years, that I was like, as long as I don't act on that, I'm not that. So I'm okay. It's like everyone has those feelings. We have those feelings of addictions, of like, oh, if I don't look at pornography, then I'm not addicted to it. If I don't drink alcohol, I'm not an alcoholic. If I don't act on my homosexual feelings, I'm not a homosexual.
Is that dog still alive?
No, she's not. And that brings up emotions too. Because I had her for 10 years and she died the day that I broke up with my current girlfriend because of my religion. And that was painful because she was with me the first time I let go of someone that I had feelings for. And she died the week I let go of the second person that I cared for because I thought I had to pick my religion. I'm still grieving that dog, still grieving that, that
Jen can throw you the tissue box.
mindset. Yeah, you don't want all the mocos all over, right?
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, there's a lot of grief there and a lot of feelings I have there.
Yeah. Well, I guess in the story we'll get there.
I know. I'm like, I say something, then I jump ahead.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
It ties in.
No, that's perfect. That's perfect. So what does that do to you psychologically and behaviorally? You're 15, you cut off the friendship, you deny what you're feeling inside, and you just like get your dog. And what do you do? Do you double down with the gospel? What do you do?
Yeah, you suffocate it, you move on, and you support the doctrine that you that hides what you feel.
So what was high school like for you?
Um,
And is this Bountiful High or?
well, technically it was Viewmont, but I was actually homeschooled.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
you can probably tell by how socially awkward I am, my lack of hygiene.
Don't perpetuate those stereotypes.
Oh no, I just it's just funny. But yeah, so I was homeschooled up until my college years actually. And so I was, and I think that's also a part of like, I had a very good education at home. I did. And I actually am grateful for that because the ability when I was homeschooled.
Did your mom homeschool you?
Yes.
Wow.
So and I had a lot of other curricular activities in like other colleges. Like I actually took a lot of college courses at 16, 15 years old. And so I had a lot of resources, but I was grateful for my homeschooling experience because I was taught earlier on that if there was something I wanted to learn, I could learn it and envelop myself in it. And it wasn't just about learn and regurgitate. And so I was very grateful for that experience that I had a love of learning up until college. So I could just pursue whatever was exciting and I could, envelop myself in it. Or when I was a kid, I actually had all these requirements given from my mom, of like science and math and grammar and all these things. I'd wake up at 6:30 in the morning and I'd get them all done by noon or by 10 o'clock so that I could go out and make a fort in the backyard or so that I could go like dig a hole and do something, so I could like go create or I could go build something. And so I was very, very ambitious in that aspect. But yeah, I was homeschooled. And so
do you have a sense for why your parents, I mean, Davis County, those are some well-known, good, probably quality high schools, maybe among some of the better high schools in Utah.
mm-hmm.
I imagine the social opportunities would be out of this world. Davis Arts, I'm just thinking of like a lot of fun stuff happening. Do you have a sense for why your parents wanted to homeschool you guys?
They started before I was young. They started with my older siblings. From what I understand, and from what I understand is that there were challenges that some of my siblings were having with specific teachers or with their education or with their ability to learn. That they were trying to be forced into a box that was just really hard for them to work with. And so my mom decided to homeschool us to try and take a different approach and try to support us in a different way. And it worked very well for us. I mean, my siblings, they're all very successful in what they're doing. And they've gone, and I have different siblings have degrees. And so that's from what I understand, was that it was also to be very very home based and to be also very religious based too. Because I think that was, a priority with my parents to have that involved in our raising.
But I would guess that the seminary programs in these Davis County schools would be off the charts, and the student body would be 80-90% faithful.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, but then again, there are orthodoxy can sort of say, hey, even the mainstream, I guess orthodoxy would say the mainstream religious kind of average is insufficient. Do you have a sense for whether your parents were like, my kids aren't going to get the religious upbringing or influences that they need if they go to public schools?
There was a piece of that too. Yeah.
In Utah, Davis County,
there was.
Davis County isn't religious enough.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm not trying to shame your parents. It's interesting. It's fun.
Yeah.
But Davis County isn't religious enough.
But it was, that it wasn't in all aspects of life, right? That the history didn't include the Book of Mormon history, that, and so, I mean, I even had siblings. My sister went to American Preparatory Academy, which was more religious based. And so that's when my mother did start.
Is that like a charter school?
It is. It's
like
a charter
Mormon
school,
based charter school.
Yeah, American Fork.
I taught kindergarten there.
Hey.
You did?
Yeah.
Oh, fun.
Hi, all my former students.
Is it an intense school?
Yeah, I really loved, my kids went there too. Yeah, I just, for my kids, it was that on math, reading, I forget what the other one was, math, reading, and something, they just went to what level they were at instead of had to stay in their grade. And so my kids that were more advanced could go up grades for those things.
Fun.
So that's why I chose it.
It wasn't for the religious stuff.
No.
Okay.
No, but I did know that the the people running it were religious.
Oh yes,
So
very much so. And that's actually why my mother was okay having my siblings go back into a school system, was because it was very religious focused, and that was the theme of it, you know. And I actually ended up taking some classes online from there, history classes that, you know, always tied it in with the Book of Mormon, or always tied it in with the grove, the olive tree, and all of that stuff. So the history was woven in and out of it. So
Did you ever feel like you were losing out on friends and fun, athletics, social opportunities by being homeschooled?
yeah,
Being left out?
I did to a certain degree, because I knew that if I knew at any point they would have been supportive if I wanted to. I mean, we did go to seminary. I mean, I did do driver's ed, but if I wanted to do sports or
Wait,
something.
seminary, in a seminary built, like
Yes.
release time seminary during the school day?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
All my
So you were
siblings
there
did.
with all the high school kids.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah. So I had friends, and, you know, I did
Okay.
end up having social, but like most of your social comes from your ward anyways.
So you were going to ward dances and young
Mhm.
women's and youth activities through
Yeah.
your ward.
So that social was there too.
Okay.
But I think a lot of it did cause me to be like, I had to sometimes overcompensate. Like I had to go out of my way to create social, because I've like, that's something that is very much my personality. And so I do think that contributed to my ability to connect with people and to, you know, seek out friends and to do that. But yeah, I did feel like that there were aspects that I did miss out on, that I, you know, because there's days that as a high school student, you're like, hey, y'all want to come over to my house, and no one thinks to call the homeschooler. That sucks.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I
And
was
it's
wondering.
painful. And so there was a time during my high school years that those wardies, even though we got together and we were fun, you know, on Sundays, and we were hanging out on, you know, those days, that they just kind of distanced and they just kind of went towards their own friends. And so high school years were probably a little more lonely. But then I did start going to college during those years. So those ones kind of, you know, just kind of filled in and replaced, but it wasn't the same. I didn't have a typical high school experience like most people did.
And I don't want to project this into your story, but I'm imagining if you're pushing down your attraction to women, minimizing your social interactions reduces the potential of you developing feelings for another woman.
Definitely.
I don't
Yeah.
know. You think?
Yeah. And also because but also the opportunity wasn't there as much either. Wasn't around a ton of kids my age as well.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's like a bonus if you're going to be packing down who you are, right?
It extended. And I think that's why it extended it. And everyone's like, how are you figuring this out as an adult? I'm like, well, just go with it. Like, it's just,
We'll see.
just my experience.
Live in the present moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Talk about the development of your testimony in those high school years. Like, were you learning a lot? Did you ever stumble on, quote, anti-Mormon stuff? Were you praying to Heavenly Father to gain a testimony? Were you reading the Book of Mormon? Like, just talk about the development of your Mormon testimony in high school.
I mean, it's the same as kind of what I was saying, is very, very focused, very straightforward. Like I was volunteering as a teen or a high school to speak in seminary, to talk in church, to I was studying and growing. I never looked at anti-Mormon doctrine, because if you do that, then you get sucked in, you know. If you even look at it, you get deceived, you get to sinkhole. And so it's something you just never looked at. You just continued studying and pursuing what, you know, I've always had a very strong relationship with God, that I've always been able to ask and get answers. And so that continued, especially through my teenage years, that's what I would say that's what I was known for, was being this very strong, straightforward member of the church. I had a very strong identity as that.
What about your relationship with Heavenly Father? Were you trying to get your own witness? Were you trying to do Moroni's promise, prayed and know the Book of Mormon is true? Were you feeling like you had a communication with Heavenly Father, getting your prayers answered, that sort of thing?
Nothing towards the church or towards the Book of Mormon itself. It was all around, during my teen years, it was all around like faith and goal setting and knowing what to do next with your life and knowing what to accomplish or where I wanted to be or what I wanted to pursue. And so it was very much in the present moment focused. It wasn't necessarily like I just went with like prophets are true. Awesome. Great. Book of Mormon's true. Love it. Let's go. Like I just didn't question those things. It was all more around like my life and the focus of what I'm doing next.
You're on the train.
Totally.
Yeah, you're on the train. You're on it since birth. Your whole family's on the train.
It's good. It's
Why
nice.
even question
Pleasant
anything?
refreshments. We're doing great.
That first relationship that you said that you had to kind of stop. How old were you?
15, right?
I want to say it was 16 because it went from 15 into 16. How did she react, I guess?
Did she like you?
Like all of like, I'm not even asking that. Like, even like the friendship, like to all of a sudden have one of my friends be like, can't be your friend anymore. Like,
She knew.
she knew.
Yeah.
Okay.
She knew. We never called it what it was. We just kind of knew and just kind of like,
Yeah.
we need to be done.
Yeah.
And it was like, because we both knew, like we just knew that we knew what it was. We knew what it was.
Was it mutual? Do you want to say? Can you say? Would you rather not say?
For her sake, I'm not going to give a ton of information, but it was mutual.
Okay.
It was, yeah. And so like it was mutual, and we came to a point that we both knew, and we both just stopped and parted ways. Like there was no question about it. She didn't question why. I didn't. We just knew. And so I was like, we can't continue like this.
That's hard. I'm sorry.
It was.
Yeah.
Cool. So any other experiences, religious or non-religious, from your high school years that you think are really important to your story that you want to share before we jump into kind of post high school?
No, not that I can think of.
Did you care about sports at all? Athletics?
Yeah, I did. I was actually pretty athletic. I didn't do anything as far as high school, but when I went to LDSBC, I did join a rugby group. I joined a rugby team. It's kind of my jam. I love beating people up a bit. In fact, my mom actually, when I was in high school, I forgot about this. I wanted to join the hockey team, and my mom said no because she was afraid that I would hurt other people. She wasn't afraid about me getting hurt. She was afraid that I would hurt other people. I did, up in junior high, I actually did play softball. I played some baseball. Like I love sports. So, and my family's not a very sports focused family. We didn't watch sports. We didn't play sports, but I was probably the one that like was more so towards that. So I did it when I saw it and when I could, but here and there.
What about dating in high school, dating boys?
Didn't do it that much. Not a ton of opportunity when you're homeschooled. Some did come up. Some, you meet people at stake things or after trek or, people's siblings are like, oh, she's really cool. She's ambitious, but very minimal dating, very minimal.
So did you ever kind of fall in love with a boy kind of thing in high school?
I had a crush on a kid for like a summer thing but like nothing really came of it. He mostly liked my friend. I always had that. They always liked my friends because I always had very feminine friends. And so I always found that like the guys wanted to date my friends. And so I was like, okay, that's fine. That sucks. But
ooh, that brings up, so gender, let's talk about the gender binary. Like, boys, masculine, women, feminine.
yes.
Personally, I have a gender non-binary. I have gender non-binary people close to me. Like the gender binary is a problem. So what I'm hearing you say is people didn't like the fact that you weren't stereotypically feminine as a young woman? Or
I wouldn't say they didn't like it, but I just don't think that they were necessarily attracted to it.
the boys?
Yeah. Because I think they value, because like we hung out and we would like make longboards together, or we'd go and we'd ride our bikes to the gas station, or we'd go play in the streams as kids. Like I was one of the boys. I was actually, when I was a little kid, I was the leader of the boys. Like I had this little neighborhood boy group that we'd go cause trouble. But yeah, I've had very masculine energy. I would say I'm a split of like a masculine feminine energy, but all of the girls that I hung out with had very feminine energy. And so they were the ones that the boys were attracted to, even though they enjoyed hanging out with me.
Did you feel frustration or shame about the masculine energy part growing up in a state where the binary is really reinforced and encouraged?
I wouldn't say that I felt shame, but I always I did feel, what's the word?
Just
I
different.
didn't feel desired.
Mm.
I didn't feel that I was attractive because of that. So I wouldn't say that they didn't want me or that I shouldn't have been that way, because I think everyone was like all for it. I think they promoted, because I was very, like, I was a tomboy, and that was fun. And people thought that I was very fun, but I never felt attractive.
What was that like for you to not feel attractive to boys in Utah as a Mormon? Was it sad? Was
Yeah,
it?
it's sad. It's really sad. You just feel, you don't feel good enough. You don't feel like you qualify for what they want. And so and so that's why even even dating, when I did into my teen years, I found that guys actually were intimidated by me, or they felt, actually someone I dated said that he didn't feel that I needed him, because I have a very assertive personality, but it just, that's where it kind of came in.
Mm. So that's a couple things you're kind of struggling with. You're struggling with having known you felt attraction to women and feeling undesired by Mormon boys,
Hmm.
and maybe like you weren't good enough or something.
Yeah, but you just move on, and you just keep yourself busy. You find new passions, you find new things that shake things up, or that give you that adrenaline to move on and put your energy towards.
Yeah, because I mean, you are a really outgoing, kind of
Mhm.
assertive person. I can see that going two ways. One is you get depressed and lose confidence, and you just kind of wither and get depressed and kind of start to fade.
Mhm.
And the other is to kind of react as like, I'm going to be stronger and happier and funner and
Yeah.
achieve and be successful as a. And I'm not saying that wouldn't be native to you anyway,
Right.
but that certainly can be a way of coping.
Right. There's a way of coping, and it's a catalyst for it. It's like, all right, I'm going to put my energy back into this, because this is where I feel successful. This is where I feel validated. This is where I feel I can be successful in, and that I can be identified in.
Yeah.
So.
That's got to be hard. I'm just thinking that's got to be hard in that situation to not feel good enough for the boys to like you, but then where you are feeling good and attracted to someone, having to stop that
Yeah.
at the same time.
Yeah. It's isolating.
Yeah.
It's very isolating.
I don't know if I was just going to read a question that Gerardo has. He's on the chat here. He said, let's see. How did your parents or family handle the fact that you were not stereotypically feminine? Was there anything in the family that
No, not really.
Like fem it up kind of thing.
No, I wasn't. I never felt like I had to change. I would say that my sisters kind of helped me because I still wanted to. I still want to be feminine. I still want to wear a dress, but I also want to get dirty on the weekdays. Like, I want to get into the mud and like all that stuff. And so I never felt that my parents were always supportive. I mean, my mom was like, yeah, I was a tomboy too. Like, my mom loved to ride her bike outside and to play sports too. And so I never felt like I wasn't allowed to be that. I do feel like sometimes my sisters wanted me to show up more feminine at times. Because because that's how they were, as they would show up feminine. But at times, like, there were times I'd wanted to and times I didn't want to. But I never felt that I had to be one or the other.
Yeah. So the next question I'm going to ask, number one, it's always kind of sensitive. And number two, we want to make sure there's informed consent, that you only respond if you want to and if you feel good about it. But I ask about law of chastity stuff in those adolescent years, because in many ways I've just noticed this pattern of guilt and shame being a really integral part of the Mormon experience and a really important binding force for Mormons to the church. Because and I'm not saying the church does this intentionally, but if they can get a kid feeling shame and guilt, and that they need the church to be made clean and pure, then that's sometimes a way they can lock people in.
Sure.
So don't answer anything. Obviously, we don't want you to answer anything you're not comfortable with.
Sure.
Were there any feelings of worth, worthiness that you struggled with kind of in those high school years that were prominent to you, including having to talk to the bishop about stuff or repent for stuff or just any of that stuff?
There wasn't actually.
Or even private stuff?
No. I think there was this, I mean, there's that, just the only, like, I never took it to the bishop, never took it to anybody, actually. I like, just kind of
Took what?
just those feelings that I had,
Okay,
like expressing
okay,
those feelings or how I felt. No, I never had any of that shame. I think the only thing was just that moment when we realized I was in, like, this other girl and I, that we had those feelings, like, just the painful shame of, like, this is wrong. We can't do this. We need to move on. And so just feeling grief of letting it go, but also the shame of, like, that is wrong and I'm a sinner and I'm not worthy if I pursue those feelings. But other than that, like, as far as law of chastity or those kinds of things, I never had shame or, like, anything around that.
So did you ever come out to anyone about those feelings at the time?
No.
Wow.
Kept them locked
Wow.
down for years.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
We're really great. We just got a super chat donation in from Ruben. Hey, Ruben. Ruben writes, having graduated at BYU in 2009, I couldn't come out of the closet. I applaud her bravery. It's too bad the BYU should not use spiritual blackmail. It's too bad the BYU should use spiritual blackmail to withhold one's degree. Personal life and academics should be separate. We'll get to the BYU stuff, but Ruben, thanks for the super chat. We rely on your donations to keep all this alive. So Ruben, we appreciate you, and thanks anyone who wants to support us through super chats. We appreciate it. Okay. So, all right. I think that sets us up for graduation. Anything else you want to say before we go on to post-graduation?
No, not that I can think of, really.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we're good.
So, sorry. One last question I was going to ask.
Yeah.
Messages to young women about education and careers, their roles in life, kind of there's a stereotypical message that many young women have received over the years who are Mormon. It's like, your education is to become a mommy.
Mm-hmm.
You don't even necessarily need an education, and you're no careers. Mommyhood is your career,
Mm-hmm.
and having lots of babies. Were those the messages you received or not? And how were you conceptualizing your potential life and or career
Mm-hmm.
by the time you're graduating from high school or as a homeschooler,
Mm-hmm.
leaving home?
Yeah, I would say that that was half and half. So, obviously my mother very much valued education because she went to school and received her degree in music. And so like, education has always been a focus, and, like, just what was normal. Like, after high school, you go to college. And I never felt that education wasn't for me, or that it wasn't, that I shouldn't pursue my ambitions, or, like, that I shouldn't pursue a career. Like, that one, my parents have always been very supportive, and, like, that was a good thing for me. But I do know that having a family was always the focus of, at the end of the day, that my education would benefit a family, that my education would support my kids, that, if I had an education, it would strengthen my relationship and all these different things. Like, it all still came back to the family, which, for better or for worse, I don't say that it was super negative, but it did affect my mindset of the priority of having a husband. I know that. So, but yeah, education was always a good thing for my raising, for growing up.
So you were set on an education, but career-wise, stay-at-home mom was your plan?
Oh, that one I always had a hard time with. I always had a hard time with that one, because I like working with teens. That's been my career. Working with youth has been my passion. And so I wasn't necessarily, like, I didn't want to be a stay-at-home mom. I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to, like, I wanted to have a family, but I didn't want to be a stay-at-home mom. I wanted to still have a career. And the church doesn't show women who do that. They don't really support that. They don't, and so I never saw people do that. Because even people in my ward, like, I can't even think of a mom growing up that I know of in my ward that had, like, a full-time career and was a successful woman. It's just like, They were all just moms.
Invisible.
Yeah. And so, and I understand and value the importance of being a mom, and I love it. And I still want to do that, but I didn't see that career. Like, I feel like you had to pick one or the other.
Mm. Had you read the proclamation on the family by your senior year, and had you had any thoughts or feelings about the kind of stakes in the ground that the Mormon proclamation on the family had made?
No, I mean, yes, I had, because that was part of my education. But it just supported my own homophobia. That's what it was. I was stronger in it because, wow, this came out before Prop 8 came out. Like, wow, this was such a revelation that happened before this big event. Because it just, when you have your own shame, you want to suffocate that for you, and you suffocate that for others.
Yeah. Yeah, there's that line from the Book of Mormon musical, find the box that's gay and crush it.
Yes. Yes.
So the proclamation on the family, what about the gender roles part of the proclamation on the family? Do you remember having feelings about that? That the woman's job is to nurture the kids and the man's job is to provide?
Yeah, that one was always like, really, do we agree with that? Actually, there's someone in my ward who I really respected, where the wife, actually, now that I remember, she moved into our ward, and there was some people actually had negative thoughts about it in our ward, but she worked professionally and her husband stayed home with the kids. And I remember people being like, oh, we love them, but that's not what's supposed to happen. She's not supposed to provide for the family. It's his job. And so I remember there was like some negative comments around there, but I was like, good for her. Hell yeah. She's awesome. Like, she was someone I admired. Really, I definitely admired her for that, but nothing to the point that really challenged it for me. I was just like, I don't know how I feel about that.
What year did you graduate from? Well, graduate from high school, whatever that means for a homeschooler.
2012.
Okay. 2012. All right. So you graduate from high school. What's next in your Mormon story?
So I went to Utah State University. Loved it there.
Yay, go Aggies.
Go Aggies. I would have stayed there. I would have gone back there if my life hadn't been in Salt Lake City. I would have loved to go to that school. But if we did, we wouldn't be here now, would we?
Hey, I was there at the time.
Where?
I was at Utah State.
Were you?
At the time you were there.
Wow.
Yeah.
We would have been besties.
I was getting my psychology PhD.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay.
In the counseling center. Yeah.
So yeah, I was at Utah State and wanted to be a vet for a while. Then I was like, no, I want to help people. So I want to be an EMT. And then I was like, actually, instead of helping people, because I got my EMT and was doing like volunteering on ambulances. And then I was like, actually, I want to help people change behavior rather than just like help with emergencies. And so that's kind of like Utah State was like a little transition for me, but I was there when they changed the age for the mission. And so when they changed it, I went immediately right after, because I was like all about that. I was like, I'm going on a mission. So I went on a mission.
By the way, Utah State has a great psychology program. They have great psychology.
That's good to know.
But you didn't know.
Didn't know.
Yeah. Okay.
I bet they do. I bet, I know a lot of a lot of colleges have good ones, but they're not as cheap.
Yeah.
And they're not as desired upon by the Mormons as BYU is. BYU is the Holy Grail, right?
It is. It is. I know.
That's what every Mormon wants to go.
So you decided to go on a mission.
Yes.
Were you 19 or?
Yes. It
Yeah?
was. I was 19.
All right. And did you always want to serve a mission, or was that?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
I always wanted to serve a mission. Because I'm one who wants to have a voice. I'm one who wants to be heard. I'm one who wants to change. Like, I want to get out there and make a difference. Like, and so that's in my understanding, to the best of my understanding, that's how I could do it. Right.
Mhm.
That's how you made a change, was you stood up at the pulpit, you went on a mission, and you supported and fought against those things that fought against us. So that's how I was taught that I could do that.
Oh,
So
that's awesome.
yeah, so went on a mission. I had good experiences. I actually do love my mission. I served in Oregon. I loved those people there. Loved them. I gave everything, everything. Like, I became a sister trainer leader. My mission president.
That's like a leadership position for sister missionaries.
It's the highest. Yeah, it's the highest one you can be as a sister in the mission. And so, I became that pretty quickly, and I helped with a lot of training sisters, and I trained a lot of sisters. And my mission president actually said that if sisters could be APs, I would have been an AP. And they actually called me AP Sister Orr.
That's awesome.
Which at the time I was like, that's the best compliment ever. And now I'm like, how dare you be so sexist? Like I should have been.
That's right.
Yeah. So I loved my mission, and I gave it all, and I fought hard and I worked hard. And I never had anything that challenged or questioned, or like I was all in, and I finished out well, and I loved it, and I wanted to go speak everywhere after my mission, go speak in all the churches and all the firesides and all the places, and they opened up Facebook when I was there. And so I started a blog, and I started Facebook and told my stories, and other missionaries were sharing my stories. And so it was just my way to make an impact and my way to make change and to inspire other people. So it was good. I did love my mission. Always challenges, but it was good.
Up through the end of your mission, did you ever get messages from Mormons that are like, hey, ramp it down? Like you're kind of to communicate, hey, women, you're being a little bit too much for a woman in this church, or were
Nope.
people very supportive and
Very
encouraging?
supportive.
That's so great.
Yeah. I had such a great experience. Everyone was like, man, like they knew who Sister Orr was. They knew who she was. They knew that that I worked hard, and that I had incredible stories, and I had incredible relationships with people, and I helped a lot of sisters to have fun on their mission, and I helped them to believe in themselves, and I helped them to believe that they could do things that were uncomfortable. And so that's always been my platform. That's always been my drive, is that if there's something you want to do and there's something you want to make a change, you can do that. You can push, you can work hard, and you can have fun while doing it, and you can be yourself while doing it. And that's what actually a lot of sisters would say after they would go on exchanges with me, which is they spend a day with me, then they go back to we'd swap companions, is they would say, Sister Orr taught me that you can have fun while doing this, and you can be yourself, and you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be this perfect, pristine. Because I do remember going to sister trainer leader meetings where you'd go, all those leaders that they had in the mission, and they would just I hated those meetings. I hated them because these sisters would go there and they're like, we're trying so hard to be perfect. And I'm stopped singing Disney songs so that I could be more righteous, so that we could have more success in our areas. And I hated them because I was like, oh my gosh, they're so they were so self-deprecating because they weren't perfect. And I would go away from those feeling disgusting, because I was like, I am not where they are. I love Disney songs. Is that okay? Or I would just do things in a different way.
What's wrong with Disney songs?
They are of Satan.
No, from the
they
perspective,
just don't focus on Christ.
They're not Christian enough.
They're not Christian.
Oh,
they don't focus on Christ.
So there are
they don't focus on
missionaries that
God.
were against singing Disney songs?
There were.
Okay.
And it's just this idea that the more righteous you are and the more perfect you are, the more success you'll be, the happier God will be, and the more people will receive our message. And so I hated those, and I came away from them, and I was like, no, I don't agree with that. But I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to do these things my way, the way that works, and the way that I connect with people. Because I believe I have a gift of connecting with people and being able to relate and understand and empathize, but also inspire them and empower them to improve their life. And that's what I was doing on my mission, is I was helping people improve their life.
And sometimes when someone has confidence or wants to speak or wants to have a voice, there are the lobsters in the bucket that want to pull that person down. Did you ever have people say, well, Sister Orr's prideful, or Sister Orr is, an attention seeker? Did you ever have people coming at you?
But I've always had that.
Yeah.
I actually got that from the elders. The elders would say stuff. They wouldn't say it to me, because I was often in the outskirts of my mission, where I wasn't around a lot of people. People had to share wards with other elders, and I was like, that sounds awful. But I just heard things in passing where where they would say oh, Sister Orr's so arrogant, or so, just that she always has to say something, and people would feel
too vocal.
Yeah. And this has always been my whole life, is that I have a personality that people love or they loathe, because I will say something. And to some people that's safe. They're like, I know that she will always say something and that she will tell me how it is. And to other people that's not safe, because they feel like I'm a threat. And so I've just accepted that people will either love me or loathe me, and I'm okay with that. And I'll just say my truth, whatever it is, that whatever I feel is right at the time is what I speak.
That explains BYU graduation.
Just a bit. Just a
bit. You learned that earlier. Anything else about your mission experience that was important to your faith, or, you know, sometimes cracks develop over time in someone's faith or testimony. Also, did you have success? You know, anything you want to talk about, like people you brought to the church or whatever? Anything else you want to say about your mission?
Yeah, no, I do feel like I was very, you know, in the eyes of a missionary of what the church regards as successful. I didn't know this. I don't know how accurate it is, but someone told me that I was like the highest baptizing sister in the mission, which to the church is like, oh wow, that's amazing, that's incredible. So, you know, there's still some guilt of things that I ask people to do or to change in their life that I look
Did you
back
ever have an
now.
investigator who was LGBT?
No, I didn't actually.
Okay.
I never did, which is ironic for Oregon, or like you would think, but no, I didn't. Never came across that in my mission, but no, just things that you ask people to do or you expect them to have to do that, you know, you think is right at the time that you're like, you know what, now it doesn't even matter. It doesn't even matter if you go to church 6 times to get baptized. It doesn't matter. You know, or someone who's like, oh, I do my own sacrament at home. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you did that? But now I'm like, cool, good for you. You know, any self-improvement you want to do, that's awesome. Good for you. So there's just little things that you have regret, but I don't have a lot of like, I have regrets looking back, but at the time I'm like, you know what? I did the best that I understood. So there's things that I'm like, I wish you understand better now, but I did the best I understood how.
Yeah. Okay. So you finished your mission around what year?
2013.
Okay.
Man, you're going to ask me all timelines, and I'm the worst at that.
I love timelines, but don't worry about accuracy.
I'm not going to 100% agree to any timelines, but I'll do the best that I can.
Yeah.
My sisters, they're like, I have a good internal clock. I know what time it is, but I have a terrible internal calendar. I'm like, isn't it Friday? Is it Tuesday?
Okay. So you graduate, you finish your mission,
Yes.
Come home in glory, speak at all the firesides or stake, whatever.
State conferences, youth conferences, young women's events. Like I was all about that. And everyone's like, I would go and they'd be like, thank you so much. And then word would get out and I'd go speak at all these different events.
Did you ever have in your mind kind of like, someday I'll be in the Relief Society General Presidency?
Ew, no. Relief Society sucks. I wanted to be with the teens. I wanted to be with the youth.
Okay.
I was like, young ones would be fun, but I was like, I just want to be, I wanted to work with, youth. I wanted to work with teens. I wanted to work with young adults. That's where I wanted to be.
What about EFY?
Oh, I applied. I wasn't accepted.
Oh,
I hated that. I applied for EFY and I applied for HEFY, where you like go travel to like foreign countries. Those were the worst interviews, I'll tell you, because they put you in a room with a bunch of people and then they're like, all right, we're going to watch you. We want you guys to come up with an icebreaker game. And so it really became this like, whoever was the loudest and the most flamboyant and was the most assertive. And I was like, I hate this. We're all like competing with each other to be the most outgoing and show busy. And I was like, this sucks. I actually didn't like, I went to EFY and I didn't like it either.
why not?
Because they do these things where you have to like create these chants and create all of these like skits. And I actually was able to get out of them because I would ask my EFY counselor deep doctrinal questions that she felt like she needed to like explain and or discover or explore with me. And I got out of doing the loser chants. And then I was like, oh, sorry guys, I can't do it with you on stage because I didn't learn it with you.
Interesting. That was before your mission.
Yeah, it was before my mission. But I wanted to do FY. I wanted to work with them, but wasn't accepted.
Okay. So you are on the circuit. What about after your mission? What about like continuing your education?
Well, after my mission, I was broke as a joke. Being 5th of 7 kids, my parents would have loved to pay for all of our education, but that's a lot of kids and a lot of education. And so, my whole life, I was responsible for paying for my education. So I got a job, working with youth and treatment centers. Loved that. Loved doing that. And then I started my own company, and then I started doing that for a year. And then
what kind of company?
An outdoor gear company. So I designed a specific type of hammock, and then I did that for 5 or 6 years. A lot of fun. Got to go travel around the country, do different trade shows, meet with bigger companies like Cabela's or Big Five Sporting Goods. So that was fun for me too. But even during that, I was like, you know what? This is cool. I'm good at sales. It's fun, but I want to help people. I want to work with people. I miss that. And so I started looking into how I could prevent youth from getting into treatment centers. I wanted to try and be on the path of when they're trying to make those decisions. And so
So prevention instead of like
rescue.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to do more prevention instead of rescue.
Because Utah's like a national headquarters for sending troubled youth.
Yes. In RTCs.
Yeah.
And so
what is the RTC? What is that?
Residential treatment center.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I worked in residential treatment centers and I loved it. There's things that, that are hard or you don't agree with, or different things that are, but I was grateful for my experience because I think it taught me a lot of leadership and a lot of, I learned a lot of therapeutic understandings that helped me further my desire to do that. So
what stuff didn't you agree with at the RTCs?
I'm not going to talk about those ones right now.
Okay.
I want to stay focused on my mission.
Good.
So
okay.
Just the stuff that I want to focus on is, empowering and people being seen. And so with that, I then started working at the Boys and Girls Club, just here in Murray. And I started working as a teen director. And that was by far the best job I've ever had in my life. Working with teens and giving them experiences, because the Boys and Girls Club, they help youth that are some that are latchkey kids, some that are refugees, that are homeless, or just youth that need a place. And so started working there and moved up in the company. And so that was after my mission. But when I was going back to the Boys and Girls Club, my friend at the time was like, you should go back to school and this would help your career. And I was like, wow, you are right. And so I started, I had the money at the time and started applying for FAFSA, and I got some support with grants. But that's when I started going back to BYU. As I was working with youth, I was in psychology. I was learning all these practices and these things that helped benefit my job. And it was awesome. Like I was able to do live application of what I was learning. And so we were running programs like sex ed programs, and we were, teaching things like drug awareness or dating or like identifying unhealthy relationships and behaviors. And that was so cool for me. And so, excuse me, I was at BYU at the time. And so that's where I still am. I was able to move up in my career as the overall director of the largest location in the state of Utah, and go to BYU at the same time, working full time and going to school full time, and paying completely for my education.
Yeah, that's really hard to do.
It's a heavy load while trying to navigate my sexuality and a relationship that I was in denial of.
Okay, wait, you just jumped ahead. Okay, so yeah, you're fulfilling your prophecy to your mom of getting into BYU. So is that hard to do, and how'd you do it, and was that awesome to get in?
Yeah, so I would have gone to Utah State because I love the culture there. I always said, because actually it changed in my teen years, I was like, I don't want to go to BYU. Going to BYU is like going to school with your mom. And one of my friends reminded me of that. She's like, so how was going to school with your mom? I was like, shut up, I've always gone to school with my mom. I was homeschooled. But yeah, they do have a prestigious well-known psychology program, one of the larger ones. And so and it was affordable. So I went to BYU. I was accepted. I remember telling my mom at like a family reunion, and she was so excited because I was the only sibling to get into school, into BYU. And so it was really exciting. And so I was all for it. And here we go. I'm going to BYU.
Plus it's the Lord's University.
It is the chosen child. Got to go to the chosen university. My siblings would kill me for that one. I'm the favorite, you guys. So yeah, I went to BYU, and they were so excited about that. And everyone was all for and supportive.
So some people like me just loved BYU culture because I just wanted to be swimming in Mormon orthodoxy, having been raised in Texas. But some people have culture shock where it's just like too much of a meat market, or too much superficiality, or too cheesy, or too Mormon-y. How was BYU culture for you?
I thrived at the beginning. I really thrived because with my history of understanding religion and understanding doctrine and being so proactive with it, I would thrive in it because I had so much to say. I had an opinion on things. And so at the beginning it was great and it was fun, but I also never lived in Provo. I never lived here. I never lived in that culture.
Kind of a commuter.
I was a commuter.
So you weren't in the dorms. You weren't ever in the
No.
student housing.
Mm-mm.
That's a different experience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. You're having to drive back and forth from freaking
yes.
Farmington to BYU
until
Provo.
Until COVID hit. I actually, I was living in Bluffdale at the time. And so I was right in the middle by Draper. So I was in the middle of my job in Murray and at going to Provo. And so I would drive to school in the mornings for some of my classes. And then I would drive all the way back to Murray. And it was like 100 miles a day and then drive back home. Like it was 80 to 100 miles I was commuting. And so I tried to navigate that as best I could. And then, and then COVID kind of came in clutch and threw everything online for me. And that helped a lot.
Except when I'm thinking about my BYU experience, like being in the dorms, making all those friends your freshman year,
Mm-hmm.
and then like rooming with them after your mission, and then like living in Provo, you always like, you've got all these people, social groups you're hanging out with, you're dating people, and you're so close to campus, so you can go like bowling on campus or the varsity theater. Like, and I'm super old, so like I don't even know if BYU still has a varsity theater or international cinema, but living close to campus and with other BYU students was a super integral part of like my enjoyment of BYU overall.
Yeah.
And if you're living freaking in Farmington, commuting and having a full-time job and COVID hits, I guess in some ways you're not having maybe the ideal BYU experience, especially as it relates to opportunities to meet other students in your student ward and date and get married and all that kind of stuff. Get married young.
Well, and taking also into consideration that I went to BYU older.
Yeah.
I went.
Oh, how old?
Again, timelines. You're going to get me on this one. I want to say like I was going there 23 or 24.
That's when you started.
Yeah, that's when I went there. And so I had already started my career.
Oh, yeah.
And most people were coming right out of high school.
Yeah.
And so part of me was like, yeah, I do know. I knew that I was missing out on what everyone's typical BYU experience of like going to all those things that you say, you know, like the parties and the events and the games and all of that and having that BYU pride. I never had. I loved it because it had a soft spot in my heart and my home, but I never had that experience because I was going into my career and then letting my education catch up.
Got it. Yeah. Okay. So then did things start to get complicated at some point, for you, either faith-wise or sexuality-wise or life-wise? When did kind of things start getting complicated or weird? Were there cracks that started to form?
Yeah.
Talk us about how does the drama start building?
Drama starts building.
What's the beginning of that?
As a friend, no longer felt like a friend.
Tell us whatever you can tell us about that.
So I had it was a friend of mine, a really good friend. We became best friends. And everybody knew, like, we were just really awesome friends.
BYU student or just someone from home or do you not want to say?
Not going to say.
Okay, that's fine.
I want to respect that for her.
That's fine.
Yeah. So we just became really good friends. And then it became as like there were feelings that started to surface. And I think that like, and here's the thing is like now looking back, it's like sometimes it's embarrassing to think of how much in denial I was or how much I tried to suppress, but been doing that my whole life. Right. And so it was part of my own tendencies and behaviors and reactions and responses and coping. And so I started to have these feelings and immediately I started to try and date as much as I could. Date. Because boys. As long as I dated boys, it meant this wasn't a relationship. And so in that, you know, and there's those feelings of like, oh, we just have a codependency. Oh, this is just something else. And it became very, very painful for both of us that I was dating guys and we're like, oh, but like, oh, my sister, you know, sometimes your sisters get jealous. Oh, she's just getting jealous that I'm giving someone else attention. Anyways, that's where some cognitive dissonance started to begin.
So prior to having feelings for this woman, had you had any feelings for boys? Had you had any relationships with boys? Any of that? Any attractions or relationships with boys ever up until?
Yeah, actually I did. I dated a guy. The longest I dated a guy was 9 months. And it was before I met her. And we had a pleasant relationship. It was decent. I broke it up because he wasn't as good at communication, as talking about deeper topics, about, really addressing feelings. And so that kind of became hard. And when we broke up, he told me that I laughed too loud in movie theaters.
Gross.
Yeah.
Yuck. Well, as I understand it, oftentimes when you finish your mission president has this exit interview with you
Mhm.
where he often tells you to get married as soon as possible and have as many kids as possible.
Sure.
So like, I'm thinking you dated someone 9 months, like so many people come home from their mission, find the first person they're attracted to, and within a couple months at most, they're engaged. Or did you have that timeline that is often imposed on Mormons in your mind at all? Or was that were you aware that that was a thing? And if so, how did you square that with your ambitions and how you wanted your life to go?
Oh, I saw that for sure. I mean, yeah, that typical talk, it was very rote about at the end of your mission to go, this is your next step. But the whole time I was doing this, I was like, no, I'm pursuing a career. And if he shows up and can keep up, then we're good. Like if he shows up, then we're good. But if he doesn't come, then that's fine. I'm going to keep going. Like that was my mindset all the time. And people would talk about that. They're like, how's dating going? I'm like, no one can keep up. So I'm still dating. I'm still interested. Like I'm open to it, but I'm just like, no guy could keep up. And they would say, like, even guys that I've dated, they're like, I never felt like you needed me. Like, I don't.
Oh,
I don't need you.
that is so freaking awesome.
Yeah, it is.
And not Mormon. Like this is in some ways one of the most non-Mormon stories I've ever heard. If you mean gender stereotypes, dating stereotypes, that sort of thing.
Yeah. And I just attributed it to my personality. I was like, I'm just assertive. I was always that. I'm just assertive, right? I'm very proactive and ambitious, that I'm going to go for what I want. And I wanted someone who didn't lean on me. I wanted someone who went for what they wanted beside me, right? That we could live our individual lives together. That was what I wanted. I didn't want someone to lean on me. I didn't want someone expect me to lean on them, but I wanted someone who our lives lined up and we could do it together. And I never found a guy who they never came around. And I dated a lot of guys after I started going, like after my mission, like I went on a lot of dates. I always tended to date rugby players. I'm very attracted to bearded masculine men, which is very interesting, but, and that's where I do know that I am bisexual. I do think that it is a scale, and I do think that a lot of women are on that scale or men, like there is a scale to your attraction. And so for me, I would say that I have like an 80% attraction to women and that there's a 20% attraction to men. So that there are men that I'm attracted to and that I definitely could see myself with, but majority of it and the majority of my attraction, things that I love, I have been able to find in women.
Yeah. And I'm guessing this isn't just a Mormon thing, but my sense of Mormon men is that they want to be needed. They want to be adored. They want to be first place in the relationship, and that an assertive, smart, that to be an assertive, smart, strong, confident woman is a major disadvantage to finding a Mormon male mate.
Yes.
Was that your experience?
Yeah. And actually, after breaking up with him as well, and he was the one that told me he never felt like I needed him, someone recommended a book about it was called The Queen's Code. I think it's called The Queen's Code. Man, I haven't thought about this book in a long time, but it was about how to empower your man to still feel valued and respected while still living your life. And I remember reading it because I was like, wow, I don't let men feel needed enough. That's so interesting. And so like, I was just like having these processes of like, how do I let them feel needed? And how do I navigate that? Because it's just not my personality. I don't fall into that.
It's so much cognitive load. There's so much to deal with in life. So how do I take care of the man's feelings so that he feels good self-esteem? Like it's just pathetic.
How to make you feel so good about yourself? Because I feel great about myself. But apparently I have to do it for both of us.
Yeah. Were you going to say something, Jen?
I was just going to say, I was just thinking it, but that is kind of taught to the women within the church that, it's kind of they're the helpmate or they're the
Helpmeet.
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Like they're the whatever it says in the scriptures, it's kind of, and like when we used to in the temple, agree to like, follow our husband and our husband would
Hearken.
hearken and our husband would hearken to God. Like they were like one step ahead, and we're kind of taught to like even in just like everyday church, like in everyday church week, like we the men have a meeting, we make sure it's all coordinated, and we provide the refreshments, and we clean up and we do the dishes in the kitchen, and we there's just this like we have to take care of them kind of feeling, like they can't just have their meeting and do everything, like we're responsible for them, like helping them so that they can be successful at whatever their calling is or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I think that's unfortunately taught rather directly or indirectly within the church to the women within that. Did you feel that same thing growing up?
Yeah.
Did you feel that?
Yeah, I would see that and recognize it, and I would like, but I also thought it was just a mindset less than like an indoctrination per se, because I remember that the way that I got out of that thinking was I would look in the scriptures that there were prophetess. There were women in the scriptures who were prophetess, like Miriam are these women that I was like, I love them because they are female prophets. And that's why I was like, yeah, I can be that. Like that gave me permission to step outside of that expectation. And so that's why I never really felt that I had to be that, because there were other women within the box of the church that I could look up to that were more accurate to my lifestyle and my personality.
I love that you did that. I love that you found that for yourself. I wish that more women would have found that for themselves within that. I remember praying to Heavenly Father after I read the Book of Mormon, because I was getting frustrated that there weren't women in the Book of Mormon, like stories of like heroic women and things like that. And I remember praying about it one time because I felt like, I'm like, where are your daughters? Like, where are the things that you're wanting to teach us? All I'm saying is, be a helper. And I'm like, I want to be a hero. Like, where's the heroes, And so I really love that you found that for yourself. I think that's brilliant. I think that's maybe a foreshadowing for you.
Maybe, yeah.
Of your life. I think that's awesome.
I'm curious about role models. So this is going to sound weird, maybe to many people, but one huge crack in my Mormon testimony was being told how many women were named in the Book of Mormon versus the number of men that were named in the Book of Mormon. It's something like only 6 women are named in the Book of Mormon, and like 3 of them are from the Bible or something crazy like that. And there's like 150 men. Like that ratio was just outrageous to me once I kind of had my feminist awakening. But I never ever stopped to think about it before that, right? But then I also think about like so like there's like Nephi, there are prophets that I could relate to as a Mormon man, or like general authorities, like, oh well, I love Elder Maxwell, or I love Elder Oaks, or Elder Holland, or whoever. Like, did you ever have a Mormon female role model like Sherry Dew? Was there anyone that you could look to in the Mormon church hierarchy as a woman and say, man, I really want to be her, I really want to look up to her? Was there anything? And then you mentioned like more like prophetesses, like Ruth. I don't know who that would be, but there aren't a lot of stories. Most of the women in the scriptures are harlots, or shadow characters, or behind the scenes kind of thing. So what did you do for Mormon female role models or scriptural female role models?
Yeah, there were two. The first one was Miriam. That one always like since the beginning in the Bible.
What did she do?
She was considered a prophetess, and she did.
She's probably got like 3 verses. Like, does she?
She did something cool. I remember she led people. I remember there was something it's been a long time since I thought about it, but she did something in the Bible that she led people or she received revelation from God. It was something that was like normally the prophet's role, but there was a prophet at the time and she still was considered a prophetess. And I loved that because I was like, cool, I can be a prophetess. That's awesome. And then the second one I remember growing up was Julie B. Beck.
Julie Beck.
Yeah. I looked up to her because she would make bold claims that were very, very strong, very, I don't know, controversial, I guess. But there were things I loved about her that I remember saying, oh, if there was a prophetess today, it'd be Julie B. Beck. Sherry Dew was so. I'm still curious to this day if Sherry Dew is a lesbian personally, but
I've had that same thought.
not going to spread any rumors, but
I won't either.
I mean, she has her selection of anyways.
Yeah, well, I won't get into that.
No.
So, and I'm going to share a link to an article by Jana Reese that talks about number of women versus number of men in the Book of Mormon. Did it ever bother you that there were so few female role models in scripture and or in the church leadership? Like, you even talked about an ambition to become a mission president's wife.
Right.
Like, they don't even have their own title.
Right. I can only
They
have
are
success
entitled
under
to-
him.
What?
I can only
Yeah.
have success as a what I wanted to be, a speaker or as this position because of my husband. Like, I wanted him to get that so that I could do what I wanted. And when I recognized that it was so few, it empowered me to be like, okay, then I'll be it. Like, it wasn't like this, oh, we're so oppressed. It was like, fine, challenge accepted. I'll be the one that does it then.
Nice. Okay, you may not want to talk about this, or you may. They've made some changes in the Mormon temple ceremony over the past few years in response to feminist critiques. You used to have to veil your face as a woman, and now you don't.
I didn't know that. No, I didn't know that.
When you went
haven't been in a long time.
But when you went through, you didn't have to veil your face?
No, I did, but they don't have. Do they still have to do that?
I thought they took the veil away.
I've heard that.
Yeah.
That they took the veil away just recently, very recently.
Yeah, in
They don't
response
have
to
to
feminist
veil their
critiques.
face. Well, I don't know if they took the veil away, but they don't have to veil their face.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't think you have to veil your face anymore.
Wow.
In the Mormon temple. The other one historically that, again, they changed in response to feminist critiques. The man would covenant with God, and then the woman would covenant with the husband as he hearkens to God.
Mm-hmm.
But the woman was covenanting with God, and then the man was covenanting with God. Do you remember or do you want to share, or do you have any memory of any concerns with gender equality in the temple ceremony, or having feelings about that?
Nothing extreme, really.
Okay.
No extreme emotions or opinions or thoughts. I do remember just being like, why? Why do I have to covenant to my husband? Why can't I just aren't we good, God? Like, I'm pretty sure you and I are good. Like, we've been really good this whole time. Like, why do I have to become second?
Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do. I remember why do I have to become second? But I'm like, but if I love them and we're a team, then we're a team. So you just kind of justify it, Yeah. You do mind acrobatics to just get around those kinds of things.
Yeah.
But nothing too extreme that challenged I questioned.
Okay. So that was a bit of an exploration. Now let's get back to, you tried dating a lot of men.
Mm-hmm.
You knew you were attracted to very masculine men, but overall 80% of your attractions were to women. Mm-hmm. So you develop a friendship. Do you want to take us now into that story?
We'll go back. So again, I was dating men, and it was causing a lot of conflict within our relationship as best friends. And
so your friend was feeling things about you dating men.
And it was hard for me because I would go on dates, but I'm like, I would much rather be hanging out with her. I'd much rather be over there. And so I actually never dated anybody that long during that period. Like, again, the guy before her was the longest. Anyway, so during that time, I had a really awesome mentor, who was also my best friend, and she was my boss, and we would talk, and I'd go in there and I'd be like, hey, let's talk about this. And she's like, yeah, that's really hard. She's like, when you're ready to talk about this, I'm like, what? Talk about what? And she's like, whatever you want, whenever you're ready. I'm like, just say it. And I just wanted her to say it. I wanted her to say it because she knew it and I knew it. And I was just like, oh, I'm just having problems with my friend. We're really codependent, and this is really hard.
Yeah.
And she's like, yeah, must be. And she was so great. I mean, I spent hours in her office, and it was a long period of time that I grappled with this, and things would be okay. And I wouldn't date people, wouldn't date guys. I wouldn't find anybody, and everything would be fine again, and we'd be good. And life was awesome. And then I would be interested in someone, and then it would go down again. And then maybe she would go on dates, and so we just tried to stay in this friend zone, and it was painful.
Like, was it ever explicitly acknowledged verbally between you and your friend? Like, we both are attracted to women,
No,
or
so denial.
or like,
Mm-mm.
I really like you, or we can't do this because we're both, or never even acknowledged. Wow.
No.
She's faithful.
Yes.
She was faithful at the time to the church.
Yeah. That's why even going back, I'm like, oh, this is painful to say because it looks so obvious now. But you spend 24 years suppressing something. You spend so long convincing yourself that as long as you don't pursue those feelings, you're not that. So I didn't think I was that. I was like, no, I don't pursue these feelings, so I'm not that. And so, yeah, it was painful, but it was this constant battle between feeling I had to choose between my spirituality and my sexuality, of just those feelings. And so I was meeting with a therapist, and we were talking, and she's like, I want you to say something. And I was like, what? And she's like, I want you to say this. How does it feel? And I had to say that. How does it feel to be bisexual and know that I can be loved? And I said, what did you say? And she's like, you heard me. I was like, no, I couldn't even say it. I couldn't say it. And I sat there, and then I said it. I said, how does it feel to be bisexual and know that I'm loved, that I can be loved? And that hit me. That was that was a crack. It was this biggest crack in my world. But I was like, oh my gosh, this is who I am. And it hit home. It was like, that is true. That is real. And it was beautiful because I was like, wow, I can be loved. I can be this, and I can be loved. Hey. And so that shifted. And once I felt that, I was like, okay, that's what I am. Wow, cool. And I was able to move with it. Because once I understood, it just changed my thought process of how I saw it. And it shifted, and I was like, okay, let's do this. That's what I am. And so then it was, grappling with I am this way, but we can't be in a relationship because that's not right, according to the church. And so we agreed, and we broke up. And that was when my dog died. Oh, that was painful. It was this in 1 week. I was starting a new semester at BYU. She and I agreed that we recognized what it was, and we identified it, and we were like, we cannot be this.
So you recognized it, but you came out to her, but then she would have had to recognize it and come out to you.
It was super mutual at the same time. We're like, look, this isn't. We're like, yeah, it is what it is. And so we're like, but we can't because it's wrong. And so that same week, I drove to my sister's house in Cedar City. And when I was driving back, she called me, and she's like, Scout just passed out. Scout was my dog. And so I just came out to my first sibling. My dog died. I was about to start my new semester, and she was moving out that weekend. She was moving out. She was moving away. And so it all happened at once. And then
you loved her.
I did. I did. And so she, yeah, so all that happened, and then 2 days later, I got COVID, and I was
Oh my gosh.
sicker than a dog, and it put me 2 weeks behind in my school, and then my boss quit, and then everyone was expecting me to take this new role. It was just so much, like, so much at once. I was like, "This is a lot." Like, my identity, my school, my education, my job is shifting, like, just all these different traumas that were causing things to shift. So, yeah, we were in that position, and so anyways, spent some time apart and, um, more therapy, more support from my mentor. And I came to this realization that I was talking with someone and I was like, I got to take this to God. He and I got to discuss this because this sucks. And so I did. I went and I do this thing where I write this letter, but then I also write what feelings and impressions I get back. Anyways, through a process of my own relationship with God, my own communication through revelation was that my sexuality was a gift, and that this was okay and it was beautiful. And
Do you have the letter?
I do. Yeah.
I guess it'd be hard to find.
I know. I
and
was like,
read.
it's in a notebook.
Okay,
But
okay.
yeah, it's something that
What were the types of things that were in the letter?
it was it was that my sexuality is a gift, and that my ability to love other people is a gift. And that this is something beautiful that is what is something that I'm allowed to have if it's something that I want. And that was like so freeing and just like so empowering. And the moment that happened, that shifted. That was like another big shift. And I was like, awesome. That's cool. That's like, this is what the answer is for me. And God told me, and we're good. Like, it was just such a cool spiritual, because I am a spiritual person. And I always felt like I had to pick. I had to either pick sexuality or I had to pick my spirituality. And at that moment, God's like, no, you don't have to pick. Like, you can be both. I was like, whoa.
So this letter wasn't you telling God what you wanted. It was your perception of what God was communicating to you.
Right. So my letter to him was, this is hard and this is painful and I don't know what to do. I don't know how to navigate this. How do I face this? I flip the page and I breathe and I just start writing. I just start writing whatever comes.
It's like revelation.
Weird, right? Is that what a priesthood blessing's like?
Patriarchal blessing. Yeah.
Oh, that too. All of them, right?
Yeah.
Wow, I could experience it now. But yeah, that was it. It's my revelation, it's my answers. And I'm very confident behind those, and very like, it was such an incredible spiritual experience for me that, yeah, I wrote it down and was like, wow, okay, God, let's do this. And then I did it again the next week where I was like, so it's me again. Hi. If this is okay, then what's going on with temple? What's going on with ceilings? What's going on with garments? Should I be wearing these? Let's go. Because I felt worthy. I always felt worthy. Even working in the temple, I always felt worthy. And I felt worthy taking the sacrament, even when we were in a relationship. The moment I didn't feel worthy was when I was around people who knew she and I were in a relationship, and they saw me take the sacrament, or they saw that I was wearing my garments. And that's when I didn't feel worthy. And that's how I was able to identify that shame.
Oh, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that I think that it's beautiful in those moments where you were writing, like you were asking or you were writing to God, and then you turned the page and then you just wrote down what came to you, because that came from inside you.
Yeah.
Like that came from within you without any outside influence. And I think that those are the moments where I feel closest to God, is when I just listen to what's coming from within me instead of everything outside of me, like we've been taught to.
Right. Your inner
You
knowing.
know? Yeah, just like your inner knowing. So anyways, I just thought that was beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that process has played a crucial part in my shifting, in my identifying, in the way that I like decided to recognize and start seeing myself, because this was always a demon. There was always a demon within me that I had to avoid. And then once I like wrote it down and took it to God, and I was like, this is my demon, I'm facing it. Then I was like, oh my gosh, this is beautiful. and this is my gift. I thought it was my demon this whole time that like was a crux that was on my back. But I was like, no, this is my gift. And I can live this and I can be happy. Like it just shifted everything. And so then this process again, where I went back again, I was like, hey, how does temple fit into this? How does garments, how does all of that fit? And so I wrote and I was asking these questions. I flipped my page and I'm like, I'm either in the mountains or I'm in my closet. It's one of those two, either in the mountains or in my closet. And I have this special
Literally
spot.
in your closet.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Wow. How ironic is that? But that's where the least distractions, but like the mountains are usually my go-to. I've got a special spot that I go and I can oversee the valley. So it's this process again. I wrote down, what about this? And then I flip the page and I just start writing what comes to me and what I feel is right. And I came to this realization that God was like, I make covenants with you. And you and I make agreements. And you and I can make your life plans and what is right and what is wrong. And you and I do that together. And you do not need an entity between us to tell you what those covenants are. There does not need to be an entity to tell you what is right and what is wrong. That was another huge shift. And I was like, okay, let's do this.
So my current brain and I think Jen's brain are just like, woohoo! Right, Jen? Like, yes. Yeah. Jen's doing the heart sign.
Yes.
But my Mormon brain is like, no, that's not how it works. Like my Mormon brain is like, it sounds like Jillian's being deceived by the adversary, because if you receive revelation that's counter to the revelation of the brethren, that's counter to the scriptures or the way we interpret them, that's counter to the proclamation on the family, well, that's got to be deception. That's got to be the adversary fooling you into self-justification.
Probably. I definitely have gotten that, but not.
What do you mean you've gotten that?
Just little things here and there where people are like, you're deceived. I'll get to that because that's actually
okay. Yeah.
That's been coming more recent, but
okay, but all of me affirmingly say, wow, you're a faithful, active Mormon at this point, starting to date another woman, and you receive revelation from God, which is, by the way, we surveyed 1,600 LGBTQ Mormons.
mm-hmm.
Something between 40 and 50%, as I remember it, received spiritual affirmation affirming their LGBTQ
mm-hmm.
identity. So that's that. So more often than not, if an LGBTQ Mormon prays to God, they get a spiritual witness that God's okay with their sexuality.
Yeah.
So like that's consistent with the research. That's beautiful. And I love it. Oftentimes that's what saves people's lives
mm-hmm.
is when they feel God's affirmation of who they are. But I'm just wanting to rejoice my current self. Like, I love that you're a faithful Mormon, mm-hmm. that you receive that empowering revelation from God, and that you keep wearing your garments and you keep serving in the temple, mm-hmm. and you stay active in the church while you're dating a woman.
Yeah.
That's some empowerment, some spiritual empowerment.
It was a shift. It was just, and that's the thing is like, I just went with the next thing that I knew that was true. And then I followed it. And then the next thing, and then I followed it. And that's how it just slowly shifted for me when I knew something was right, I just did it. I followed it. Right. Because that's how I always was. But before I was told what was right. And now I'm asking and I'm feeling what is right. And so there's that shifting of, and that's why I was grateful. Like I am grateful for my religious upbringing because it did, I was able to learn how to connect with God in a way in environments that, yes, there has been some like damage and some things that I have to reprogram, but overall I learned and I knew that I had a relationship with God and that the church couldn't take that away from me. And that my revelation is not attributed to the church, but that is mine and no one can take that.
I mean, I love that. I'm so inspired.
What's been cool is even when I had that revelation it's controversial to what the church teaches. When I came out to my parents, I told my mom, like I was explaining my experience because my mother has always been so supportive of me. Like she's so loving. And I told her my spiritual experience and she was like, that's great. And I was like, but what if it's against what the church teaches? She's like, I trust you. And I trust that you get answers from God.
Mm.
And so I was like, awesome. That's good. Like, it was the coolest experience that, like, my mom trusts me. And she, like, they've loved me no matter what, right? And they still choose to stay in the church, and that's fine with me because I felt still loved and supported in what I'm doing. I'm okay with that.
Way to go, Jillian's mom and dad. Thumbs up for me.
Yes.
Okay. So like, were you at this point, openly dating your girlfriend, with your parents? Were you introducing your parents to your girlfriend? Like,
Yeah, that was part of the coming out. It was like, hi, this is who I am, and this is what we are. So they're like, oh, well, at least we like her. Right. So it was an easy transition because they already liked her. And so yeah,
how long ago was this coming out to your parents? Like a couple
it was
years?
COVID.
Okay,
It was
couple
COVID.
years. Couple
Yeah,
years.
so give or take in that range. So
Okay.
we were in this position then. We're like, all right, so here we are. We're still at BYU. And now what do we do? How do we navigate this? And so I had issues with different roommates that I had to take to court that were very aggressive and threatening, that I had fear that if they knew, I would be turned in, that were actually BYU students. And I had different people and different people that I knew could potentially turn us in. And there was a lot of fear there.
So let's talk about, for those, just talk briefly about what the honor code is and how you experienced your understanding of the honor code.
Yes.
And what that might mean for you as a BYU student. And then also there's the changes to the BYU honor code that would have happened while you were there. So what do you want to talk about all that? BYU honor code. What do you want to say about that?
The honor code, when they did that shifting and changing, that was before I was identifying the way that I identified.
Okay.
And so I just saw that there was a lot of excitement, and then there was a lot of whiplash with them retracting things, changing their minds. So all of that personally, I don't have a story that connected me to that. I just saw people excited and then disappointed. But for me, the honor code is, the rules is that you can identify as being homosexual, but you are not allowed to be in a homosexual relationship. You're not allowed to act on those feelings. And I actually have a close friend at BYU who in his freshman year was falsely accused of acting on those feelings, was taken into the honor code, questioned and interrogated. And he was traumatized from that. And he wasn't even doing anything at the time, but later on we had these conversations, and we were kind of like a support for each other later on in our last 2 semesters. But you are not allowed to be in a relationship, or your education and your degree is at jeopardy. And so I understood that, and I knew it, which is so interesting because in the church, you can be in a relationship and they won't kick you out, but they will at BYU. So there's kind of a distance there. But we knew we were in a relationship, and I was like, all right, well, we got to navigate this and just keep it under wraps until I'm done. And so it was always was like, until we're finished. And so my family knew about us, but nobody else did. My work didn't, my people in our circles didn't. So we just had to keep
You were just
that.
close friends to your friends.
Yeah. Just as we always have been.
Mm-hmm.
And so, just good friends.
What's that like, having to hide that? Number one, having to hide it from everyone. And number two, fearing that if you're found out, it could jeopardize your education.
It was frustrating and terrifying at the same time. It was really frustrating because I want to live authentically. I want to be real. Like, that's how I've always been, is when I know something, I want to live it. When I know something, I want to speak to it. I want to empower other people to do the same. And so when you're in this position where you can't, when you're trapped, it's suffocating and it's painful, and it affects your relationship too, because you don't feel that you can be authentic in all aspects of your life. And so that's hard, but it was also scary because it was like, I'm not jeopardizing my degree. I've worked so hard for it, like to pay for it out of pocket, to do it full time. Well, I did a full-time job. I never even got a summer break. I did it all the way through summer, sometimes taking 18 credits in a summer. Like, I worked so hard that I was not going to jeopardize it in the middle of it. And so, yeah, we knew that we needed to get to the end, get to the graduation.
Mm.
Is it true that even now, because you don't have your actual diploma in hand, that they could not give it to you for speaking out?
I received my diploma in January.
Oh.
They mailed it to me. So when they mailed it to me, I came out publicly. I actually had a video that I posted on my social media that said that now that I have my degree, I was not able to come out like I was before, but I'm doing this because I want to live authentically. And I am bisexual and I am in a relationship with a woman and I love it and I'm happy and I'm proud of it. And that's why I was like, because I'm so tired of being suffocatingly hidden that I was like, I just want everyone to be on the same page. This is where I'm at. And it's normal and it's great and we're good. And I'm tired of having all these conversations and I wanted everyone to just know. And so I did. I came out in January once I had that diploma physically in my hands.
Smart. And just to really put a fine point on it, if you had been caught prior to getting your diploma, found out, turned in by the honor code office, what consequences could you have faced and how severe to your personal life, to your finances, to your education could it have been? Worst case scenario.
Worst case scenario, they scholarships I had received, they would have asked for those to be paid back. That my degrees and transcripts would have been frozen and removed, that I would not have been able to continue my degree there, that I would have lost many, many credits that do not transfer anywhere else, and that they would not have let me graduate, that I would have had to start over at a new school.
And that would have set you back how much time and how much money?
Oh, man. At least 3 years worth, and I don't even know how much money. Over
tens of thousands.
Yeah, I was going to say 10 to 20 grand at least. So
yeah.
Big sacrifice.
Yeah.
Big risk.
Yeah. Yeah. Really quickly, I have to ask this. There are aspects of faithful LGBTQ Mormon culture. At BYU, is a Voice that's a off-campus support group for LGBTQ BYU students? I'm trying to remember it's not Voice, but there's a
few.
Do you know, did you know about them? Did you attend those? Were you a part of it at all?
No.
I'm trying to remember what their names are. Someone's going to type it in the comments in just a second. We'll wait for that. But also there's Ben Shalati and Charlie Bird, which one was, I guess, is an honor code officer who's gay and out. And then Charlie Bird was like Cosmo and out and gay. USGA. Thank you, Gerardo. So you had never attended USGA or didn't know anything about it?
I didn't even know about those other students or those people until like way later on when I identified, like way at the end of my graduation. But no, I was never part of any groups there.
Okay, so you didn't learn about Charlie Bird or Ben Shalati until like the past few months, you're saying?
Yeah.
So you weren't even aware of them.
But I also wasn't in the BYU culture. My world was in Salt Lake.
Okay.
Because even everything was online. So I wasn't even like talking to students. I was literally there just for my education.
What about all the campus protests, the rainbow stuff, the lighting up the Y, were you just all the ways the church has tried to crack down at BYU on LGBT affirming protests, coloring the sidewalk with chalk. Were you there for any of that? And if so, did you have thoughts or feelings about that?
Yeah, I always had thoughts and feelings, but I was like, I felt like a chained up dog. I was like, I want to fight. I want to get in there. I want to be there. I want to be on the Y. I want to jump over that fence. I want to be there. I want to chalk. Like I wanted to do it, but I was like, I can't. Like I can't do it because then if they connect me to that, they'll connect us. And then I'm like, I couldn't chance it. Because I was so close, but it just felt like we talked about it with my siblings and I talked about it with like my girlfriend and we're just like, can you believe this? This is crazy. This is exciting. I can't believe that happened. And like, we have friends that are so involved in that. And we're just like, I just felt like a chain dog. I was like, I want to do something and I can't. So it was cool to see. It was inspiring. It was, I loved seeing it, but I just felt like I couldn't even participate.
Okay. And then this is a multi-part question, but I'm hoping you can cover all these things. It's a very common Mormon experience to hear LGBT people disparaged in some way in a church service or in general conference or whatever, whether it's gays or the sign of the times, they're examples of wickedness. So like anti-LGBTQ rhetoric on Sundays at church or in general conference. So there's dealing with that, knowing that you're a closeted LGBTQ Mormon. So homophobia, and then there's just kind of trying to like square your testimony, your Mormon testimony, not your testimony of God or Jesus, but like of, are the brethren still inspired? Is the proclamation on the family inspired? Do the brethren have this wrong? And if so, do I still believe in the church?
Mhm.
And then there's freaking Holland's musket talk.
Yes.
So cover all three of those. And if you need me to remind you of any of those, I'll jump in.
Okay, I think I got this. So
Of course you do.
when I through this experience of my relationship with the church was first when I started to recognize that I identified the way that I did, and then to realize that the way that I know is right to live, to like pursue my relationships and to live that lifestyle that they say didn't match up with the church. I was like, okay, this doesn't line up. I'm good. I'm going to walk away from the church and we're going to be fine. I don't need to walk away angry. I'm like, we're fine. You can do you and I'll do me and we'll be fine. And so that's kind of where I was at. Is I was like, okay, just get to BYU and I'm good and I'll move on and I don't need to be affiliated with the church, but there's no hard feelings.
So leave the church.
Yeah. And so I was like, that was like it was like this first exodus for me where I was like, okay, I'm done. No, thank you. Thank you for what you did. But I'm good. So actually, when this all happened and I realized that I no longer needed to wear garments, I no longer needed the covenants and the temple, I pulled out my temple clothes and I pulled out all of my garments that had just been in my closet. And I looked at them and I said, thank you for what you did for me, but I no longer need to believe in you. I threw them away.
Was that emotional?
It was a moment of grief.
Because your sister AP Orr or whatever, right?
It was.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, it was a moment that I needed where I said, thank you. I can appreciate it, but I no longer need this. And I no longer need to believe in you. And then I got rid of them.
You threw away your
out.
garments and your temple clothes after being a temple worker.
Yes.
That's almost cinematic.
Yeah, it was a good moment for me. It was like a funeral, but like a Phoenix funeral, where you close it out and you're grateful for it, but you don't need it. And it needs to die. It needs to go. But we're good to move on. And so it was during that I was like, all right, it was like my first exodus, my first leave.
But also like how mature that you're saying thank you, because so many people just go straight to rage and anger. And maybe that's because you didn't receive maybe some of the abuse that other people had.
Definitely.
But how beautiful that you could also say, I love you and thank you.
Yeah, I agree. I love that. I think I think you're very powerful.
And mature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, and you'll be very empowering for other people, I believe, in your path. To have the mindset to say thank you, and then to kind of have that grieving process for that.
Mm-hmm.
And then also to have a rebirth of a new path and a new knowing, I think is beautiful. Yeah. I think that will be wonderful. I'm excited to see what the next step is for you.
Like what happens next?
Yeah.
So yeah, that was the first part of my grief, and allowing myself to feel it, allowing myself to feel that grief, because there's always a grief. There's always a grief when things change or when they shift or when things that you thought were crucial and detrimental, no longer, that facade is gone and that reality shifts, because it did. And so there was a heavy grief that I was like, I need to feel this, and that's okay. I can let it go, and it can be felt, and I can move on to what's next and see what's next. And so that was my first shift. And so then, so a little bit of history about my family. I have, out of the 7, I 1, 2, 3, 3. My older brother came out gay when I was in the church.
Whoa.
Yeah, sorry, that was probably important to bring up earlier. And I grieved. We all grieved. It was painful when we learned that. And so that my parents, they shifted with that. And then I had 3 older siblings who left the church.
Oh.
And then that was a big shift. Sorry, those are probably important.
He was one of them? He was one of the 3?
Yeah. So then,
wow.
and then 2 of my sisters left. And that was another level of grief for us.
This is like the perfect Mormon family starting to unravel from a Mormon perspective.
And then in my last semester.
Wait, really quick.
Yeah.
Did you ever say to your brother, me too kind of thing at the time?
No.
Did you want to like?
No, it wasn't because I wasn't there. I wasn't there
Okay,
yet. I was
okay.
still in the earlier phases of denial. So
Yeah.
I wasn't even like,
Okay.
yeah, me too. I was like, wow, that is so bad. Because I was in that mindset of like, of evil, making it evil. Anyways, so we all grieved. And then my parents were very good about it. They were very loving, and like my family stayed together very, very well. So my other two sisters, they left the church. And then right before, in my last semester of college, so fast forward, my last semester of college, my brother, who was just called to the stake high council and was set apart by my dad. He oversaw the young men, and he was in this prestigious position. Told us that he and his wife, after the Holland musket fire, started to look into everything. They started to do all of the history and all of the research. And so he and his wife, it was awesome because I actually went to brunch with her because I wanted to talk about it. What she did was she looked at all the information that you guys provided here. She looked at everything the church provided. And then she looked at, the apologists? The group. And she said, I would look at a topic that all three groups were talking about. And she said, when all three of them were talking about this, I then looked at myself and said, how do I feel about that topic? She didn't go about what everybody else was saying or arguing or persuading. She said, they're all acknowledging that something happened that I didn't know had happened. How do I feel about that? And then she navigated it. And so they both were doing this together as a couple. 2 weeks after he was set apart as a stake high council member, they removed their records from the church.
What?
And asked to be released.
Yeah.
It's just this, my family, my siblings, we are all very similar in that we are very passionate about finding truth and following it. And so that was like so big for us. We're like, what? Like, and he is like, my brother is like the male version of me, just super ambitious, loves to public speak. We actually built a motorcycle together when I was a kid. Like we're super close. And he's about 8 years older than me. But I went to brunch with her, with my sister-in-law. And I was like, talk to me, what's going on? Like, tell me what happened. Tell me your story. And so she explained all that to me, that she took this information and asked herself, how do I feel about that? And then navigated her own truth. And I was like, well, tell me what you're finding. And so she's like, well, there's this document that has all of the information about what the church has ever said about LGBTQ individuals.
That's Kyle Ashworth's For the Record document, which we will include in our show notes.
Yes.
Is that what you're talking about?
I hope so. I'm the worst at names. Let's hope so. But it's like almost 90 something pages.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? She's like, yes, it's everything that was ever changed in manuals or scripture or over the pulpit or in the ensign or anything anywhere that has ever been talked about individuals of the members of the LGBTQ community. And I was like, please send that to me. And then she's like, also, I'm learning this.
Oh, it's called On the Record. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Okay.
And so then she's like, I learned this about history. And she was explaining how, all these different things when it comes to Joseph Smith or polygamy, or why he went to jail, or why the whatever press was burnt down, and all these things that I had limited information about, and that I had just been happy with my little section of the story. And then she gave me more, and I was like, oh, you're right. I didn't know why that happened. Oh, I didn't know why that happened. And so she was sharing these things with me, and I was like, okay, I need to look into this. And this was at the very end of my college, like my last semester.
Was this CES letter stuff?
Yeah, she also sent me the CES letters.
Okay.
And so she gave me all this information, and I loved her advice. And so I did. I looked at what the church was saying about it, and I looked at what you guys had shared, and I looked at this information. But that document about what the church has said about the LGBTQ community blew my mind, because everyone says the church loves this community, and everyone says, no, we don't teach this, we don't teach that. And I'm like, this is 90 freaking pages of discrimination, of like all of the things that we say that we don't do, of excluding, of shaming, of demonizing this. And so it was so cool to see that. And I was like, wow. And it blew my mind. And so that's when I started to learn more. And I started to leave for a second time for a second reason. And it was how women were treated in the church and how we were seen. And I started like that lens of how women stood in the church and how they were represented and how they are seen. I started to see it. And someone that same month was like, if women were allowed to have the priesthood, you would totally have it. And that upset me so much. I was like, why can't women have the priesthood? And she's like, oh, I don't know. And I was like, well, why not? Like, let's challenge this. Why aren't we asking this? And so all these things started coming up, but that upset me, where I was like, why can't I have this authority? Why can't I have that level of a connection with God? Why can't I have God's power to do his work here? Because I'm a woman. And so that's when all the questions and challenging came, where I felt like I left for a second time. And it was a different emotion. It was more of that frustration and anger that comes with grief that people can feel, and that is okay for people to feel. And then I went to lunch with someone who wanted to kind of catch up and understand where we were at. And she was like, why do people who leave, why are they so angry? And why do they feel like they have to push all of this on other people? And I was like, I can't speak for everyone, but that is part of the grieving process, is to be angry. But also, we're taught in the church that if you leave, it was because you weren't strong enough. We're taught that if they left, it's because they didn't read the Book of Mormon. They were deceived. And when we start realizing truths and we think that people won't believe us or trust us, we feel like we have to prove that. This is why. Don't you see this? Don't you see this information? Don't you understand that, like, all of this is out there? And it blew my mind that members of the church their testimony is so fragile that they will not look at anti-doctrine because they're afraid that it will shatter. And I felt that for a long time, that I felt that it was so fragile that we won't even look at it because it potentially could be true.
And if I could, I would use a slightly different word choice, not to mansplain or correct you, but they won't look at factual
Sure.
church history.
Sure.
Because even the factual church history has been labeled
Yes.
anti-doctrine as a technique to keep people from learning the truth about the church.
Yes. They won't look into anything other than what they're told to look at.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
That's
that's a
me
sign
for
of weakness,
43
right?
years.
What's that?
I said that was me for 43 years.
Yeah.
I would not look anywhere for anything about the church except for on LDS.org.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You only believe what you're told to believe. And so my personality of challenging and questioning it got me to that point where I was like, all right, if it's true, then we need to challenge it, because we do that with everything else, right? We do that with any other organization or any other belief or thing, is we want to hear the opposing facts because we want to make a logical decision for ourselves. We want to hear all sides, except for the church, because it can't be wrong. Because if it's wrong, then it means I'm deceived. Like, it's so, as a public speaker, you learn manipulation. As a public speaker, you learn tactics. As someone who loves to motivate, you learn manipulation. You see it.
And you start to see that in the church?
Yeah, you start to identify that. You start to learn there's fear-based. You start to learn there's pedestaling. You start to see these things that if you get off the pedestal, you're less than. You will suffer. You're not happy. But if you stay up here and follow us, you're better than everybody else.
Do you mean pedestaling faithful LGBTQ Mormons? Do you mean that?
Oh, no, just anyone that stays active in general.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I can respect, and and that's the thing, is I can respect when people want to be a bridge. I thought I could be a bridge. I did. For a long time, I was like, this is awesome. I can be a bridge for people, or I can identify this way, and I can also stay active, and I can still do this.
Yeah.
And then just the more you look into it, the more you learn, and the more facts that are there that you can't turn away from, and you can't deny, that you have to look at yourself and be like, what are my values and what are my morals and what do I stand by? And do these line up? And if they don't, then I can't. And you can't affiliate with that. You can't affiliate with something that fights against yourself. You're betraying yourself all over again.
Mic drop.
Yeah.
I still hold space for those who want to. Because I know that I was everywhere along that line. I was the faithful, proactive, assertive missionary that thought that communities would fall when they accepted LGBTQ individuals. But then I was in the middle where I identified and I recognized it, but I wanted to be the bridge and stay active. And then I know that I'm moving over to this way. And so I can hold space for everyone who wants to be anywhere on that range, but I know where I am and I know where I stand.
Do you remember how you felt when Holland gave his musket talk and you were still a BYU student?
Yeah, I was livid. I was really mad. I was really, really mad because I knew that Matt, who he mentioned, Matt Easton, who had given his valedictorian speech and had in his speech come out as being part of the queer community, I knew that he had that pre-approved. And then to hear Holland, who was someone that I always respected and I always admired because of his public speaking abilities and his empowerment and how he empowered change, I was so frustrated that he made him an enemy when he had permission, and the church, he didn't take accountability for the church or even took accountability that the university itself gave permission. He instead made Matt the enemy. And that infuriated me, that he had commandeered a BYU graduation when he already had permission. And so that's what frustrated me, was that I started to see more evidence of the church not taking accountability and making other people the enemy.
Yeah, but at that point, you're too far into your BYU education, right? You gotta
Exactly. Still a chained up dog.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that just probably built the pressure to come out in some activists, to engage in some sort of activism at some point when you feel safe to do so. Maybe.
A bit, just have a voice. I didn't even, with all that happening, I just wanted to say something. So yeah, I wanted to stand up.
Yeah. Really quickly before we come to your decisions about graduation, when you were reading the CS letter and studying church history, separate from the on the record LGBTQ stuff, were there things about church history or church doctrine or things you learned that were really troubling for you, that also were an important part of you deconstructing your Mormon beliefs? You know, Book of Mormon, Book of Abraham, polygamy, you know, those are some of the normal things. What were the big ones for you?
Yeah, that's the things, like there's so many that I don't even know where to start. You know, what's interesting is I was actually taking a class on the Bible at BYU, and it was actually BYU that actually started discrediting the Bible for me.
How so?
Because they showed how often, there's so much historical evidence that it has been so tweaked and changed and translated and transcribed. The amount of times the Bible has been transcribed alone, to me, was such a huge discreditation that it just kept changing and shifting and being changed according to however that individual felt that it needed to be translated, or how many books were in there that didn't even, like, how they wrote all this stuff about Jesus after the fact, and just so much history about it that we don't even know, that it was BYU that actually discredited a lot of it for me. But then when I started studying, that's where the Bible started, but then I moved, shifted over to the Book of Mormon and the history of Joseph Smith and all of that. There was so much there. Like, I can't even I'm not going to accurately just cite these different information, but the stuff about like abortions that had happened during Joseph Smith's time, and whoa, maybe that's why he doesn't have any posterity. Or wait, he was actually practicing polygamy illegally, and so that's why he was actually in jail in the first place. Wait, there's all these records of, the 14-year-old one. That one straight up is like, are you kidding? How can you justify, oh, I just trust God that that's what the prophet wanted to do?
You mean to marry a 14-year-old?
Yes, to be sealed, to marry a 14-year-old. Like, that has nothing to do with what he claimed. Like, he would have these rules that, oh, it's to support the women. It was to carry on with posterity. Well, Joseph Smith, where's your posterity? Well, what about this 14-year-old? I don't think she was a single wife that needed help. Like, these things that they were doing that would completely contradict his rules for what God said polygamy was for. And so that one, like, that got me big time. It's just seeing these things that were shifting, or the burning of the press, or how why they wanted to arrest Joseph Smith, and how these, that it was around him marrying all these women, or these other prophets that were marrying them on their birthdays and getting all these sealed to all these different women that they didn't need to be sealed to. There's just so much that we all, like, in the church, you just believe are just 100% lies because the prophet doesn't talk about it and no one in the church talks about it. But then when you're out, you're like, wait a second, there's so much historical evidence. There's so much historical facts. And what hurt the most was that the church says eternal families, and yet we are the biggest church that, like, the Mormon church is the biggest church that does not promote eternal families.
How so?
That you cannot be with your eternal spouse if you are not sealed in the temple, if it is not a heterosexual relationship, and if you are not living righteously. It is. They say we believe in eternal families, but yet there are these qualifications that you cannot be in the celestial kingdom unless you are married to a heterosexual individual, like a heterosexual relationship, living this lifestyle. And so that got me. And I was like, there's no space for homosexuality. There's no space in the temp. There's no space in that. And so one of my best friends from college was like, oh, well, that's what the lower kingdoms are for. Maybe you get to be with your girlfriend in the lower kingdom. I'm like, do you even study the doctrine that they taught? There's no space up there for people like us. Like literally, they're breaking the law of chastity. To be in a homosexual relationship is the second worst sin.
Next to
Denying the Holy Ghost, and it's equal to murder.
Yeah.
It's up there with murder. I'm next to Ted Bundy, guys.
Oh, man.
So that kind of stuff is what got me. And I was like, no, I can't sit with that. So it's a whole new level of questioning and challenging.
Some people are like, yeah, but the Book of Mormon, I received a witness that it's true. And there's no way to explain what amazing of a book it is other than that it was given to Joseph Smith by God. How did you grapple with the Book of Mormon?
So learning the history and learning the facts of all of this stuff, you reflect on like those spiritual experiences that you have had in the past, right? Of those things that you on your mission, you're like, wait, I thought I felt this. And then I reflect on them. And there were times that you feel positive and exciting emotions around the importance of loving one another and how you love the person you're teaching and how they're agreeing with you on something and you feel this connection. And so sometimes we attribute that to, I feel the Spirit and that it's testifying that the Book of Mormon is true. But to me, I'm looking back, I'm like, wow, I just felt such a connection with this person that they wanted to change and we cared about each other. And there were things that I shared that helped them to want to be better. And so I just started to like identify these in a different way than the ways that I thought that it was, because, it's one of my, my brother-in-law, he explained it this way, is that if you see something on the news that's like, help this family, they're struggling, they need a home, they don't have any money. And then I feel prompted, I feel good. And you send the money and you feel so good about it. And then you learn a week later that they were a fake and that they weren't losing their family. They just wanted money. And you're like, but I felt the promptings and I felt the feelings. Like you feel these feelings of doing something good. You feel these feelings of wanting to help people and wanting to be involved in something greater and something to be good to improve your life. But then once you learn it's false, it doesn't mean that you didn't feel those feelings. It doesn't mean that, oh, they really were poor. It just meant that you felt compassion and you felt that you wanted to help someone.
I love that. I really do. Like having a simple way to explain that. I think that was a very simple way to explain it. Because I think that's what a lot of people transitioning from believing to not believing is going back and trying to figure out all these spiritual experiences that we feel like we've had.
Yeah.
And I love how you just kind of broke it down to just having a connection.
Yeah. Or even like
and empathy.
Yeah. Or feeling like, oh, but I felt the Spirit when I was sealed to someone, right? Like I've been there. I've helped with sealings of important people or seen people be sealed together. But I was like, no, we're celebrating love and we're celebrating connection and loyalty and fidelity. And that's what you feel, because those are virtues. Those are truths. And you can feel that. And I don't need to connect it to these actions and what they're interpreting it as.
Yeah. And I'm not going to say this is intentional on the church's part, but we're taught from a very young age, any positive emotion means the church is true, basically. So the church intentionally or unintentionally co-opts all positive emotion as a contextualization in our minds that it's proof that the church is true. And any negative emotion, anger, frustration, sadness is darkness and the opposition. When sometimes it's actually negative emotion that's helpful and useful. But for the church, it's either positive emotion, church is true, negative emotion, evil, run away. Basically.
Right. And then all positive emotions after that are connected to church.
Yeah.
Then they own all positive emotions.
Yeah.
It's like, it's all intertwined. And it's like, oh, God hasn't told me this. The Spirit hasn't told me that. And I'm like, what about you? What do you feel is right? What do you feel is true? Trust yourself. Don't trust, oh, God hasn't told me yet. The brethren haven't told me yet. When they tell me, then we will. It's like, no, trust yourself. Trust your feelings of what you feel is right.
Yeah. So tying that back to the Book of Mormon, I guess you would have had some emotional experiences in connection with the Book of Mormon, and that would have been the foundation of your testimony. So you're saying you would have looked at those positive experiences with the Book of Mormon and later concluded, oh, well, those are just positive emotions that I experienced in the context of reading the Book of Mormon. Those didn't necessarily mean that the Book of Mormon was true. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I would say so. That I had like, there were good things. And even then I was never like a rock hard Book of Mormon missionary. I was a revelation missionary. I was all about connect with God. And so when the Book of Mormon started to crumble, I was like, oh, okay, cool. I didn't read it a ton either way. So I was okay with it. Like it was fine for me when that stuff started to crumble away. But for me, like my focus was always around connecting with God and getting answers.
I guess I'll ask this really quickly. What about Jesus as Savior, resurrected being? You said the Bible started to come into question a little bit. Some people when they leave Mormonism, they throw God and Jesus out. Others are able to kind of find a way to keep God and Jesus. How was it for you?
Still navigating Jesus.
Okay.
Still navigating that one because, there's things that are coming that I'm still learning and reading and studying and figuring out, questioning, and I've given myself permission to allow it to be true and to allow it to be false. And so I'm just moving forward with being open with like, do I continue what I believe and what I love? And is this still true for me? Still navigating that one.
Okay. All right. Well, let's shift now to your decision. You've got your diploma. I mean, there may be other parts of your story you want to tell.
No, I think we're good.
Like, okay. So like you get your diploma in January, February of this year, and then you're just kind of waiting to walk, which is your graduation in April. 2022.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us the story of how you end up showing your rainbow colors
no,
so
I think
brightly?
I'm gonna go now. This has been great. Thanks for the story.
We're done.
Appreciate it. Yeah, let's do it. Leading up to it, we had talked in January after I got my diploma. I was talking with my little sister who's been my biggest ally. And she was like, what are we gonna do? What are you gonna wear? Like, this is exciting. Like, take into consideration, I've never graduated anything. This is a big deal for me. Like, I was so excited.
You didn't walk your high school graduation?
No.
Oh, okay.
I got a GED. Yeah, I got my ACT.
Got it.
I went to college, so I've never graduated anything.
Oh, fun.
Like, this is huge for me. And I was so excited about it, It was, and they understood like how hard I'd worked for it. And I'm also the first girl in my family to get a degree. And so first girl in my family, besides my mom, to get a degree, first one at BYU. And so it was important. It was significant on many different levels. And so when I was so excited about my graduation, and we were talking, she's like, what do you want to wear? What are we going to do? And I was like, we're renting a mechanical bull. That's what we're doing, which I have paid for. That's next week, which is so exciting. So I'm an adult with big kid money. But she was like, why don't you wear a rainbow dress? And I was like, that's not quite my energy. It's not my vibe. I was like, sounds like fun. She's like, what if you put a flag on the inside of your gown? I was like, oh my gosh, that'd be crazy. She's like, and you showed it to everyone. And we were kind of laughing because she loves Cruella, right? Cruella, where she like in the movie, she's wearing this dress and then it lights on fire and it changes color and she makes a statement. Or Hunger Games, where she goes on stage, spins around, lights on fire, makes a statement, right? And we're all about that. She loves everything about that. And so she's like, let's do something like that. And I was like, that would be exciting. Let's think on it. So that was in January when we talked about it. And then stuff had come up. My grandma passed away. I had an aunt that passed away. I got in a pretty severe car accident leading up to my graduation. And so it was the week before that we were like, all right, we need to figure out what we're doing because this is a big deal and we're all exhausted. Like I had totaled a car and it was a pretty severe accident. I broke my thumb and I had lacerations all in my hand. And so leading up to it, we just hadn't given it any thought. And she's like, so you still want to do that? And I was like, yeah, I think I do. I really do. And she's like, because my sister knows me. She knows my personality. She knows that I love to challenge things, but also she knows how painful it had been for me. And she knows how painful it is for other students. And she understood that. And I understood that because I knew what other students were going through. We just keep it under wraps and we just keep going through. And I was so tired of that. And it was more than just a graduation. It was like, I got out of the closet. I got out of BYU. That was like my theme, was like, I got out. And so she's like, let's do it. So we ordered a flag online and we got my gown. And I asked my older sister who sews, and I was like, hey, can you sew this in for me? And she's like, let's do it. The day before, she sewed it in. And I was so nervous and anxious. And I was like, I'm doing this. And so I called my sister and I was like, hey, I have a history of like doing stuff. And then after it happens, I don't realize that like I was coming across a different way or I was doing this or that. She's like, no, I think this is a powerful movement. This is like a civil rights movement. And you're protesting in a civil way. And it's still dignified. And I was like, okay, because I wasn't there to like commandeer anything. I wasn't there to run across the stage flipping everybody off, right? Like I wasn't going to yell or scream. Like I wanted to do it in a dignified way that sent a message. And so she sewed it in, and the day of, I was so nervous and I was excited and I was like shaking, and I didn't eat breakfast. I couldn't sleep, and my sisters were anxious too. And so
did you don't forget where you're about to go.
Yeah.
Did you envision Today Show, NBC, CBS,
oh my gosh, no.
like this becoming, because like the Charlie Bird stuff or the Matt Easton stuff had become national news. So, I mean, there's a part of me that thinks, why wouldn't you think it might lead to that?
I never expected that
at
all. Like I thought it would become maybe a little bit of like a local news, like maybe some students would some bigger influencer students would post that and be like, whoa, check this out. She did this. That's so cool. But I knew the students would feel supported, and I knew that the students would be supportive of that.
And also I have to wonder if you were thinking about current and future BYU LGBTQ students.
Yes.
What were you thinking?
That was my focus. It was individuals who feel like they had to hide, or that they were at threat, or that they were to be suppressed, and that they could not live authentically until they got out.
You wanted them to know what, or feel
that
what?
I got out.
And that
I didn't have to pick between spirituality and sexuality.
And that they could too.
And that they could too.
That give them a little hope that they could make it too.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mean to insert that into your story, but
no, 100% that was it, is that I made it out, and that they could get out, but also that they didn't have to pick, and that they didn't have to be hidden and unseen, and that they could live this, and that they could get their degree and make it out.
Okay.
So that was my goal. Didn't expect it to get all over the place. But
so you were saying you were nervous.
I was anxious, and I actually got in the wrong line. So people, I don't know if anyone noticed, but people had asked why I was in the back of the psychology department, and they're like, you did it in the back to get this attention. I got lost. I was actually in another line about to go in and graduate in like something else. I don't even know what other college, but I was like looking at my card, and I was talking to the other people there and looking at their card. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm in the wrong line. And I had to run all the way around the Marriott Center to get back in line, to barely make it in. And we're like walking in at the end. And so
you have your card, you hand it to them,
yeah,
then they
has
read
your name, has your
then,
degree,
and then they read your name.
Okay, and so we're all sitting in this row, and my siblings are all texting me, and we're all talking.
And your parents don't know.
My parents didn't know that I was going to do that. Not even all my siblings knew, just my sisters did.
Wow, you kept it from family.
I did. I just kept it. Nobody knew. Like I didn't tell anybody except my sisters. And we were talking about it, and we're like, okay, here we go. And we're like, how's it going to happen? Like, we got this. You got this, Jill. You're awesome. But when I was looking at like how it was going down, and they show the camera and the Megatron, they focus on the person when they read their name. And I was like, that's when I need to do it. I need to do it right when they read my name, to connect my action to my name, to who I am. And so I was like, I'm going to do it right then and there. And so we're talking about it, and and my siblings, my brothers, were watching it online because they weren't there in person, but they were able to watch it live. And they're like, oh, this is so fun. We're going to see Jill graduate. I had no idea. And so they're watching it, and it's, I'm like at the very back, and I'm seeing the rows count down, and I'm texting them. I'm like, 5 rows left, 4 rows left, 3 rows left, 2 rows left. And I was like, hey guys, I'm going to leave my phone here. I'm about to go up. So just keep an eye out for me. So put my phone down, and we're walking down. And as we're walking down, I like turn, and I'm like waving because, my family's over there, and I want to wave to him. And this kid who's in line with me is like, oh, he's like, go ahead, Jill, show him what you got. And I was like, oh, I'm going to show him. And he's like, what? He's like, are you going to do a backflip? And I was like, I'm going to do something. I'll do something. And he later was like, what? Why didn't you tell me? But it was funny. I was like, oh, I'll be doing something. So yeah, I'm walking up to it and you just, the anxiety is so real. But I noticed that a lot of girls had their gowns unzipped. So I just unzipped mine because they, they're just like, oh yeah, as long as, it looks fine. And so it was unzipped. And so I was walking up and you get ready to hand your card to him. And he looks at it and then hands it to the individual who's going to read it. And they said, Jillian Orr. And I opened it up and I closed it. And I don't remember anything after that. It's like a deer in the headlights blackout moment. I texted my sister after. I was like,
but it was perfect timing because it showed on the Jumbotron. And so everyone saw it.
It was right then. It was like Jillian Orr. Opened it. I smiled. I closed it and I went, apparently shook the hands, got the photo, went back.
Were there gasps? Were there applause? Was it silent?
I heard nothing. I heard nothing. I texted her. I was like, did I do it? What happened? I was like, I passed out. Like, I have no idea what happened. Because it's just like, there's so much, it's that moment. And yeah, it just leads up to it and it was exciting. Then I went back and a couple of students on the back row turned around. They're like, yeah, girl, yeah. And then I sat down and that was it. And I was like, cool, I did it. That's awesome. It was kind of anticlimactic actually.
Yeah.
And my siblings were like, what? I did not expect that. That was awesome. How cool. And everyone's like, you did it. And so it was exciting. And the people next to me were like, my friend just saw this. You did that. And this other one guy, like, he like looked at my robe. He's like, that's awesome. Like, it was so cool. Like, I got so much positive response from my peers, from the other graduates. And then, that graduation ended and we went out and they're like, the graduates get to go out first and go find your families. And then we go out and this other graduate, she came up to me and she's like, I just had to tell you, my girlfriend saw you on live and she was so proud of you. And she wanted me to tell you, thank you. And I was like, whoa. And I was like, that was it. That's why I did it. I was like, awesome. And that was it. I was like, that's all I needed. That's all the attention. That's all the validation. Like, that's all the knowledge is that awesome. Some other student that had to go through what I went through, her and her girlfriend saw that and felt seen. And that's all I cared about. I was like, awesome. I did it. And we were good. Went and saw my family, got lunch.
Were your parents mad?
Nah, they didn't. They were like, congrats about your graduation, took a photo together. They were happy for me. And, they got me flowers and snacks.
Your mom and dad, they're faithful.
Uh-huh. They are. They didn't say anything about it. They were just like super happy that I graduated and we all went to lunch and it was great. My sisters were there and my nieces. And so it was good. No words were said and it was good. So then we went to lunch and I was exhausted. I went home and I just created a little post and
Instagram.
Yep. Just created a couple of photos, wrote a little story about like what I did and why I did it, just so that people would know, why I did it. And I took a nap and I woke up and it had exploded. It had gone. My sisters were trying to call me. They were texting me and, people who I like, Matt Easton had reached out to me at that point. Charlie had reached out to me and said, hey, congrats. People were like, all the
Charlie
students.
Bird?
Yeah, Charlie Bird reached out. All these students were just blowing up my phone. Like, it had been shared 500 times by the time I got up from my nap. And I was like, whoa. And so
on Instagram or Facebook?
On Instagram.
Okay.
Or actually, I can't remember. But when I share it, it goes to both. So,
okay.
So it just went out everywhere. And I was like, oh my gosh. And so my sisters were like, let's go get dessert. So we all went together, me and my sisters, and we were like talking about it, like, this is crazy. And we're like, oh, it's so exciting. Well, this is so cool. And then it just kind of went from there.
And where has it gone from there?
It's gone everywhere. Everyone's like, my friend, like people I haven't talked to in years, or like my coworkers were like, so I keep seeing your face from other people, like people that didn't know I was going to do that, are seeing it from their friends, or my roommates, or everybody saw it and they're like, what? One of my neighbors was like, what? I didn't know that's you. I didn't know that you guys were friends, right? I thought you were friends. It's like, nope, that's actually my girlfriend. And they're like, oh, and everyone's like putting things together and everyone's starting to see it. And it was just so many students were like so proud of me. And so many parents were like, thank you for doing that. I have trans kids. I have kids that identify this way, or my cousin, or this or that. And they've just been so positive. And then the first day or two were positive. And then the negative stuff starts to come. And the most negative responses have been people from my mission. People who had me in their home. People who are married to bishops. People who are married to, who are in the Relief Society presidencies. that are messaging and saying, you're beautiful, but you're deceived. Or congrats on your graduation, but this is really painful to see, since knowing you were raised in an LDS family and you're the second sister from our area to do this. And it was disappointing. I don't say.
What do you mean the second?
I guess there were other sisters who were gay that came out that served in that area. So like other sisters previous to me who went home from their missions and then identified as being queer. And so she was like, that's disappointing. And so I was like, whoa, like the people who are taught that they love this community and the people who are taught that there's unconditional love apparently had conditions. So if anything, like it didn't destroy me. It didn't shred anything. Like I'm already set in what I am. I'm already set in what I'm doing, but it was disappointing, I would say, because I love the people from my mission. I went back every year. I loved those people. And
went back every year to the
visit.
reunion or to visit in Portland, in Oregon?
In Oregon, yeah.
Oh, wow.
I go back every year, like
Holy
to visit,
moly.
to have like I have relationships with them there. I still have connections with people who are non-members, who are our members, who are bishops, like, and it was just painful to see that the most negativity right off the bat came from people in my mission. And so I just left them there. Like I didn't respond to them. I just left them. And the world showed them how they felt about that. And it was very, like, everybody came to my defense. Everybody was like, just, all these comments and conversations back and forth were pretty interesting to see. But I was secure in what I did and what I chose. So it's just interesting to see who's on your island and who's not.
That's Glennon Doyle.
It is.
Yeah.
And that is my dream, to be on her, to be on her podcast. Her book, Untamed, changed my life, changed the way that I saw and thought and felt about sexuality and spirituality. And hers is huge. Well done for knowing that. She's like my biggest role model.
I love her too. She was one of the first books I read in my deconstruction.
Yes.
She's just so empowering. And I love that. I'm going to tag her in this.
Please, everyone tag her. I would love.
Let's have everyone tag her.
He was like, "Hey," I was like, "Matt," I was like, "My goal is for us to get on Glennon Doyle's podcast
or Ellen,
or Ellen. Ellen would be cool too, but Glennon Doyle, just like she hits my heart different in a different way. Ellen's cool too. We all stand for the same thing, to be seen, to stand up, to empower, to fight against the constructions that we're raised in. But Glennon Doyle hits my heart in a different way."
All right, Jen, let's see what we can do to help.
Like
help
I have
Jillian.
Any pull with Glennon Doyle, but
we have social media. We can tag.
I'm going to try my hardest because I think that they need to meet. I do.
Oh, Glennon and Abby. I just have so much love for them because it was when I was coming out and my girlfriend and I were identifying, like we agreed to do this. We both read the book together. I was actually sitting at a fireside with our other two lesbian best friends that we actually used to work with and who were under wraps also. And that they couldn't come out for their own reasons. And I'm going to let them keep that to themselves. But she was telling me, you need to read this book, Untamed by Glennon Doyle. And just then I got a text message from my sister and she's like, have you read the book Untamed? And I was like, no. And she's like, I just got an Audible, listen to it. And then my girlfriend and I after we listened to it, we bought 3 copies of that book so we could share it with other people. And so we could read it again and highlight it. Like it was that impactful for us. And so when I'm getting ready in the mornings, I'll actually just pull up a chapter and just listen through them because they're just
it's
so
such
powerful.
Great. It's a great book. Great essays.
And that's where it is. It's people are on my island or they're not.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah. It shines a light. It's clarifying.
Yeah.
To know who's on your island and who's not. And I'm not LGBT, but people who leave the church, you have the same experience. You find out who your real friends are. You find out what family of blood you want to maintain.
Yeah.
What family of blood is no longer really family.
Definitely.
And then you find out what family of choice you want to add to your family.
Definitely.
Right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a good one. It was a good book. It speaks to all people, especially women, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We tried to get Glennon to speak at Thrive, but she wanted like $120,000 and we couldn't.
Oh, it would have been worth it. I would have paid $80 for my ticket instead of $15.
It's just risky because you have to pay that up front. So if you don't get
Yeah.
the ticket sales, you're out
Oh, I get
six
it.
figures.
I 100%
And
would have paid.
I think Clint would
I
have.
absolutely would have paid.
I think Clint and Jenny would have done it, but I
Mhm.
wasn't comfortable.
Mhm.
I
John,
wasn't
are you
comfortable committing them to that
Oh,
potential loss because I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not like stoked to blow people's money. You know what I mean?
Sure.
exactly. But maybe we can figure this out because
In the future,
in
Yeah.
the future, because
Hey.
I think that she would sell out any arena here.
she also
100%.
didn't want to. She wasn't wanting to prepare a talk. She wanted just a Q&A. And honestly, I think the fact that Thrive is about being beyond religion,
Yeah.
not that we're against spirituality or religion, but we also want to be very inclusive of secular people for whom religion or even spirituality right now
Mhm.
is kind of those thoughts are too traumatizing. I'm not sure how comfortable she was being involved or associated with kind of something that was secular friendly. Does that make
Sure,
sense?
Sure.
But no shade on her.
No.
We're big
No.
fans.
Yeah.
I respect
Definitely.
boundaries. I respect your limits.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. I think she's worth
She
it.
wanted us to fly her and Abby first class.
Oh, 100%.
Yes. Well, nothing less.
I would not.
I
I'm
would
like,
expect that.
She should be coming with
Yeah.
her.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And in first class.
Yes.
Yeah, well, we're fans. Okay, so all right, and then in addition to like the Today Show, and was it Today Show that?
Yeah. Today's show's done a paper, NBC, People Magazine.
Yeah.
Handful.
And somebody texted that even this has reached the UK.
Oh.
Yeah.
Like it's
No way.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
just posted her comment. She's like, this is being shown in the UK.
Oh, cool. That's
You're
so
global.
fun.
You're global, Jillian.
Man, you know what? And yet at the end of the day, I still don't want to brush my teeth at night. I was like, man, is this what fame is like? Because I don't know if I love it.
it's not the best. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
Just the small taste I've gotten of just some news coverage. I'm
You know,
like,
and it's been cool because I've talked with people because, there's a lot of negativity that comes, but they're like, I've heard that there are people who will step on shit personally, and then there's people who will step on shit publicly. And when you do that publicly, everyone's going to tell you how much it stinks. And everyone's going to tell you how much it sucks and how much you shouldn't or should or that, all that stuff. It's like, you can stand for it privately and publicly, but when you do it, it's going to come with a consequence. I expected different consequences, but nonetheless, I accept all consequences, because I am willing to accept all consequences in doing what is right. And I expected it to be more religious based, like, hey, disciplinary council, come on up, which I'm like, let's go.
Mhm.
Or if it's your diploma's going to be taken away, I'm like, I don't think they dare. I mean, we'll see, because I think it's a big threat on their end and with how much publicity this gets. But either way,
so you're a member of record right now.
Yep.
Mm.
Sure am. So it's kind of weird to think that President
That's so
Nelson
Gen Z.
knows
You're
who
like,
I
let's
am.
go. I've never heard "let's go" used in the context of a potential disciplinary council.
I
but
just wanted to
love it.
be a favorite, like
Hey.
Matt Easton is. He's like Elder Holland's favorite graduate, and I'm like, okay, can you have two favorites now?
Let's go.
Can I live rent free in your head too?
Let's go, Elder Holland. Let's go.
But it was a consequence I knew would come, and that there's going to be a lot of backlash, and some of it is hard. Some of it is hard to face, but it's an experience, and you ride the wave and you face what your choices are and you accept it. And I have.
Yeah. There's that quote that Brene Brown always uses. I think it's from Theodore Roosevelt.
Yes.
The man in the arena.
Yes.
Like, yeah, like you can stay back and you can,
it's easy to take pot shots.
Yeah, like
outside
you can
the arena.
Yeah,
Mhm.
but the man or woman who steps into the arena,
Who gets up.
who gets up, who fights, who empowers, that they're the ones.
That's the one that matters.
That's the one. Yeah.
Not the critics that
Yeah,
just
the
throw
critics-
darts from the
And
outside.
another one is what's her name? I love her so much. Oh, Elise Myers
Mm-hmm.
on TikTok and Instagram,
Yes.
where she says like, I receive that.
Yes.
Or I don't receive that.
I don't receive that.
I don't receive that. I
Oh,
actually
yeah.
just bought one of her
Oh,
t-shirts
I'm
and
so
it's coming.
jealous. I love those.
It's coming and I can't wait. And it says, I don't receive that. Because
Yes.
even in like this tiny little space of being just on Mormon Stories, like if people say something or they comment something, like I just look at the comment, I read it, I'm like, I don't receive that.
Yes. I love that.
And I just let it go. And you know what? There's something, who's in the space, who's trying not to hurt, who's trying just to love,
yeah.
like just to put out truth and love and let everyone find what works for them within themselves.
Yeah.
That's you, Jillian. That's what you're doing. You're speaking love and being inclusive and setting, showing people a path that's full of that. And I think that's so brave and vulnerable. And I'm just so proud of you.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And you can brush your teeth or not. It's totally up to you.
Yeah. Screw it. And do it still.
All right. So we'll see. Well, I hope you'll keep us posted about if church disciplines, something.
Yeah.
We feel very passionate. I mean, I was excommunicated. You probably know that for doing a podcast and not shutting it down, and for giving a TED talk affirming LGBT people and that sort of thing. So we would love to cover that if that ever happens, but I hope it doesn't, because I don't wish that on anyone. I actually recommend that people resign nowadays.
Avoid the trauma.
Just because it's so much. It's not just it's trauma for the individual, which is enough, but it's community trauma.
Yeah. Shakes a lot of things up.
It's the worst.
Yeah.
Imagine how your parents will feel. Imagine how you're, just even if someone doesn't believe, it's just hard to see someone go through that, because it's such an inhumane, barbaric, medieval practice. Especially to do it because you love somebody. You would be disciplined for loving someone.
Yeah.
In a committed way. Would Jesus do that?
All right. Would he kick people out? Would he hold them back from taking sacrament?
Yeah.
Would he hold them back from being in his group, even when he felt one had betrayed him? Like, people feel I betray them, right? This is an act of betrayal. I get a lot of kickback there, that they feel that I betray, that I knew it. They always ask that. They're like, if you knew, why did you go there? Because I wasn't fortunate enough to know that I was gay. Like, I'm sorry. Like, they're like, how dare you go to a homophobic school and how dare you be homophobic and be in the middle of it? I'm like, I wish I hadn't. It would have been nice. It would have been nice to have to avoid all that trauma and all that stuff. But I am in the career and I am in the field of change. And that is my passion. I'm in the field of change that anybody can change. And I think that BYU can change. And as long as people believe that they can change and they can let go of what people were in the past, then that allows them to change. And I'm willing to let go of what BYU has been doing, and I'm willing to let them change. I'm willing to let go of what I experienced in order for those who are potentially planning to go there and experience what I could have experienced. I'm willing to let them change.
Beautiful. And it's kind of mind-blowing that you get attacked by believers for staying at BYU after you lost your faith or after you were in a committed relationship. They're going to hate on you as a hypocrite for violating the honor code and or staying unworthily in their minds. And then the LGBT, some people who are pro-LGBT are going to get mad at you for being at BYU at all. It's like you always get hit from both sides.
Always. You get it either way.
What do you say to the Mormons who would say you should have left BYU the minute you knew you were gay, or the minute you were in a relationship with another woman, you should have left? It's dishonest. You were lying and deceiving.
I keep getting those messages like crazy, and that people are like, you're not special. Why did you do that? You should have left as soon as you knew. And they don't understand what it's like to combat that you feel like you have to pick. And I tell them, you don't have to pick. I shouldn't have to sacrifice my education based on my personal life. Those two should not have to be at a threat.
But they'd say, well, you signed the honor code.
Yeah.
You knew what you're getting into. I'm not trying to defend them. I think they're wrong.
I agree. Right.
But I'm just, you signed the honor code. You know what you're doing when you signed the honor code.
Yeah, that I still stand for what is right, and that I could have left. I could have left halfway through. And there's the arguments of I lose credits. There's the argument of why would I was so close and almost finishing out. I did what I felt was right. I did what I felt was right.
I love that.
And I don't care what everyone's opinion and what they think I should have done.
I love that you don't even have to justify it.
No.
You just say it felt right. That should be enough.
That's enough. Because
that is enough.
Right? It is.
Yeah.
I did what I felt was right. And the next thing that I felt was right, I followed it. When I got more information, I followed it.
Love it. It makes it so simple. I'm going to do that. It felt right.
Yeah.
Felt right. I don't accept that.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm taking for you.
I choose not to accept.
I receive that. I don't receive
I don't
that.
There we
receive that.
go. Gosh, I want one of those sweaters.
I'm going to get you one.
Hey.
I'm going to get you one.
Love that.
All right. Beautiful. So what's next for Jillian Orr? What's next?
Oh my God.
What do you want to do? What are your hopes and dreams? You know, for people that are looking to hire you or give you opportunities, what opportunities are you looking for?
My passion is always, my dream has been to be a public speaker. I mean, I did it beforehand, you know, around empowering individuals, working with youth, helping them accept change, you know, believing in other people and themselves to get out of the perception of what they've been raised in, or to challenge their beliefs that they can do more and be more. Like, I'm all about goal setting and becoming and challenging things. And when something is scary, you run at it. You know, when you get nervous, I get nervous every time I speak. You were nervous before we started before we started this.
No, I
You
wasn't.
said it. You do know.
I was.
Back me up. Back me up.
I always am. I always am. Every
Witness.
time I start.
Every time,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Every time you speak.
Yeah.
But the way I see it is that this adrenaline, it's kind of like a roller coaster. You get nervous before you get on it. You get on it and you don't want to get off. And then you get off and you're like, I want to do that again. And I believe that everybody would enjoy public speaking if they weren't afraid of what other people thought of them. Because everyone wants to share their story. Everyone wants to share their truth. And that's what I want people to understand is they can do whatever they want to do. They can be whatever they want to be. And they can pursue these things that are scary. And they don't have to listen to what everybody else tells them they need to be. That's my passion. My passion is to speak and present and to empower.
Yeah. So how does that look in terms of a career? Do you know? Do you want to pursue psychology? Like, you want to just be a professional public speaker? Do you want to be an author? Do you want to write? Do you want to start a podcast?
That's a bad idea.
Do you want
would
to
be
speak
fun.
at the Thrive event?
Yeah, a lot of people are like, forget Glennon and Doyle. Let's have
Yeah.
Jillian Orr speak at
That's what I'm
Thrive.
saying.
Can I get first class?
Actually,
from
can we
here
have
to
them
St. George?
both? I want both.
I want both. I'll come if she comes.
Okay.
You'll be the warm-up speaker for,
Oh,
or maybe, no,
she can
we'll
be the
have
warm-up
Glennon,
for me.
Glennon Doyle be your
I'm
warm-up.
kidding.
Yeah.
Let's just do it at the same time. I think it'd be awesome to get my master's degree in organizational psychology, also known as industrial psychology. And that is that's the degree and master's of going into an organization and helping their culture, or helping their people, or training, or helping them work with youth in a better way, in a better manner, because I think there's always space to learn and grow and change and shift. And there's new practices that we can do. And there's ways that we can challenge and improve. And I think that anybody can be a stance for improvement, and anyone can be on a platform for, becoming more and being better. So that's what I want to do. I want to do that. I want to go to other organizations and speak and present. Like, bring me in, let me talk, let me help, let me empower, do what I can, and leave after that. You don't need to do anything else. I just want to come and share more of what my truths are.
I love it. Well, I'm going to say it. I think you should have a podcast and a YouTube channel. I'm just going to say it.
We might as well start something. I just got to figure out. I don't have this kind of fancy equipment. But
I didn't either when I started. You just need a microphone
Good point. Good
and an
point.
internet connection.
Got to think of a good name, though. What should we call it? I don't know. We'll have to think on that one.
I don't know.
I'm thinking.
Everyone in the comments, tell us what it should be. Back us up.
Yeah.
I'll buy you some donuts if I pick it.
All right. That's good. All right. We'll wait and see what comments come in. Suggestions
I'm thinking.
for Jillian's YouTube channel and podcast. I named Zelf on the Shelf. So, I mean, like,
Ooh.
You did?
yeah, I
I
did.
didn't know that.
Yeah. Samantha and Tanner were at Utah State University, and they were in a faith crisis support group. And I'm like, you two belong on YouTube. And they're like, but what will we call the channel? And they were like, Zelf. How about Zelf? Let's incorporate Zelf. And I'm like, Zelf on the Shelf.
Love that. That's awesome.
Good. Did you get a box of donuts?
I got squat from Tanner and
Oh.
Samantha. So you fetch yours.
Something's coming your way.
All right. Well, this has been, I am so inspired. I just texted my daughter, Clara, and I'm like, I think you would be inspired by this interview. So I just sent your
Thank you.
interview to my daughter. I hope, Clara, you watch. but you are freaking wise and smart and inspiring, Jillian.
Thank you.
And I've interviewed a few people in my day. Anyway,
I appreciate that.
thanks for coming on.
Just doing the best I can. Just, doing a little bit better each day. I try. Not perfect, but I'm trying. Thank you.
All right. Any final things you want to leave us with? Any final words or well, let me ask you this. What does it mean? You said at the very beginning, either on or off camera, that God's important to you, that spirituality is important to you still.
Yes.
What does that mean now? Or do you even know?
That, it means that you can get your answers from God and you don't need someone else to tell you what they are, and that you can find your inner knowing, as Glennon and Doyle would say, right? That inner knowing can come from you, and you can rely on yourself, and you don't need to rely on everybody else to get these answers and everybody else to validate or tell you what is right or what is wrong, but that God can tell you. He can connect with you to help you navigate your life and help you navigate the questions and the challenges and the fears and the demons, because once you face those demons, when you run at them and you face them, you will learn very quickly that it is your strength and that it is a beautiful part of you and that it is something that you can embrace.
I love it. There are nominations coming in. Jill Spills, Jill's Corner, Finding Joy with Jillian, Stand Up, Opening the Kimono.
Oh man.
This Island, Jillian.
What is it? Wear Your Pride. I'm not liking any of these, but I'm glad people are trying.
Hey,
Life without oars.
Stand Up or. Stand Up or. Let's go. Let's go with Jillian.
Love it. Brainstorming.
Keep trying, everybody.
Yeah, keep going.
Somebody said
Keep
island.
going.
This island, Jillian.
Yeah, that's what I was
Jillian's
Jillian's
island.
Island.
Jillian's island. Hey!
So
I think we
when I
got
was a
it.
kid, my sister actually, she still calls me
awesome.
Jilligan. My sister does. She calls me Jilligan's Island. I was like, oh, okay.
That's it. Jillian's island. We did it.
I love it.
We did it. We got to give a shout out to
There we
whoever
go.
Yeah,
whoever it
that?
was that
Fun.
said that. Thanks to the listener. All right. Well, anyway.
Oh, there is something. My sister has decided that if others want any flags sewn inside of their robes, she has started an Instagram and she will do that.
How do they reach out to you or your sister? Both. What's your
My
Instagram?
my Instagram is Jillian Orr, just my full name.
JILLIANORR.
Yes.
Okay.
And hers is Reppin' Robes. She just created this because I
Spell
created
Reppin'.
I'd have to look it up. Reppin' Robes. Yeah. She
Okay.
started it after I had so much feedback that everybody was like, will she do this for me? I want to do this. This is so cool. And they're like, can she do this? Can I reach out to her? And so, yeah, Reppin' Robes, REPPINROBES.
We'll include that in the show notes too.
Yeah.
Reppin' robes.
Because she's just like, yeah, I can do this. And other people are like, maybe they don't want it to be around queer, but maybe they want like the Brazilian flag, just however they want to identify and represent themselves and be authentic. And I was like, cool, go for it. Like, we're starting a new trend. And she, we didn't go into this with that in mind, but she's like, I think I could do that. I think I could help other people do that too. And to like stand for that too. It was cool.
Reppin' robes. I mean, I imagine every time someone does something like lighting the Y,
right?
Then the church and BYU finds some way to shut it down.
I hope they create like the new law after me. It could be called like the Jill law, the Jill rule.
Like, yeah, no more cameras at graduation. Like, no more jumbotron. Like, that's a bit of a bummer.
You have to keep your gown zipped now in the
keep
rules.
keep your gown zipped.
They have to, like,
no
put
more
a padlock
jumbotron.
at the top of their zip.
I mean, that's sad to think about. And what I know about the human spirit is that BYU students are going to find a way.
But just BYU would do that, because if I did that at the U of U, nobody would have cared.
Yeah.
Would have been like, cool, awesome. That's normal.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's why it's different. That's why there will be new rules or something different. So
yeah.
But like, the church is they're going to just suffer until they change. This is a loser. Mormon church, this LGBTQ thing you've got between your teeth, it's a loser, and it's going to sink you. And you're just going to suffer until you let this go.
That's the majority of the people I've known that are leaving the church. It's all wrapped around this. It all started with Holland's talk, and it's just sinking Titanic.
Do you feel like there's a lot of support at BYU for LGBTQ students amongst the students?
Yes. Students. I think there's a bit of a mix, but I do think that there's more than we realize, but I just don't think that they feel that they can say anything.
Yeah. Yeah. But people are leaving the church over this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Definitely.
yeah.
A majority of my friends, I would say like a good chunk of like family. That's where it started.
What's the body count for your siblings out of 7? How many are still in, if you're able to say or willing to say?
5.
5 are out?
5 out of 7.
So 2 out of 7 in the Orr family are still hanging on.
Mm-hmm. And we have incredible relationships still.
That's so good.
Like my siblings are my best friends. They're the best thing my mom ever gave me was my siblings.
Do you get the sense that your parents feel like failures, or the empty chairs thing where they're going to be in the celestial kingdom, but not with their kids?
I think they're navigating it very well. That I think there's grief, but there's so much love. There's so much love and so much I think they're just navigating it themselves.
Yeah.
And I think they're definitely doing the best that they know how, and they're doing well.
I love that this isn't fracturing your family or your relationship with your parents. I'm just like, I want to have your parents on.
Shout out to Jillian's parents for navigating with love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even if they have to pause and even if they have to take their own time.
They do. And it's painful and it's hard, but they do. They navigate it.
Yeah. But they're doing it with love. And I think that's amazing.
Yeah. Like family and people over dogma, right?
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah.
I mean, if Mormonism stands for anything, it should be families and love over dogma.
Yes.
True?
Yes. And I felt that. I felt very fortunate. I feel for those who don't have that, and I'm very lucky.
I don't know if this person's an authority, but Jenny Minchie says the whole Orr family is incredible. So do you know who that is?
I definitely do.
Yeah? You got some friends on the chat.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
All right. Any final words? I mean, the one message I would love you to share is a message of hope to any LGBTQ Mormons, and specifically young Mormon girls or women who might be in the situation now that you once were in. Do you want to look at the camera and give a message of hope?
Yes, absolutely. And those are the people that I wanted to give a message to in the beginning, is that the sooner that you are authentic with yourself, and the sooner that you embrace and face the fear, and, because there's so much fear of everybody else, of how they're going to think, how people will react, how your life is going to shift, because it will. And that's scary. That your normal no longer becomes normal is scary. But the sooner that you become authentic, and the sooner that you become real and you face that, it does get sticky and it gets painful and it gets messy, but you will be happier and you will feel free, because you are living your authentic self for you, and you're not living for everybody else anymore. So the sooner you run at that, the sooner you live authentically, the freer and happier you will be with anything, with identity, sexuality, with religion, with boundaries, on any level. The sooner you do that, the sooner you will feel freer and happier.
And I don't want to respond to that, but I will say there are Mormon kids out there who don't have the parents you have or the siblings you have, and they may not have the same family reaction that you have. Do you want to speak to them?
It's true. And that's the thing, is when I say living real and living authentically, it's taking the next step of what you feel is right and navigating that.
Safe.
I can't say what's right.
Or
I can't
safe, right?
Yeah, or safe.
Yeah.
I can't say that come out 100% all the way to everyone, because that may not be right for them.
Yeah, right. Now,
It's do what feels right for you, what feels authentic to you, and then take the next step. Do the next right thing.
Yeah. Beautiful. Oh man, I got chills. Jillian, I got chills. They're multiplying. That's from Greece. I'm old. Anyway, this has been beautiful. So inspiring. Thank you. Thank you so much. And if people want to follow you and your world, Jillian. Yeah. What is tell us one more time?
Jillian Orr. My full name is my Instagram.
At Instagram.
And my TikTok is Jillian Oreo. Like the cookie.
Okay. Any final words, Jen? It's always so lovely to have you. Thank you for being here. Any final words?
No, not at all. Just what I've said before. I want to leave with what Jillian said. So I'm going to let her end it. I love that.
All right. Thanks, good, Jillian.
Thank you.
And thanks to all of you who joined us today on Mormon Stories podcast. Thanks to Gerardo Sumano. He's an important part of this team, along with Jen Camp, Jennifer, and Brooklyn, and our board. Thanks to Maddie Easton. Just shout out to him, because I see him as inspiration in this realm. Also, Kyle Ashworth. Check out Latter Gay Stories. It's a really important resource. Check out On the Record, which is a really important resource. And Latter Gay Stories is a really important podcast, and Kyle is doing great things as well. And then just thanks to everyone who supports Mormon Stories and the Open Stories Foundation. We couldn't do this without your financial support. Thanks to people who gave super chat donations in YouTube. You can also support us through the Stars feature and Facebook, but most of our support literally just comes from people clicking on the donate button, becoming a monthly donor. If you do support us, thank you. If you don't yet, this is a great opportunity to help keep us going, because we want to provide this type of content, this type of historic content, this type of inspiring content. We want to keep providing this to Mormons, non-Mormons. Half our audience has never been Mormon. We want to keep providing this type of support to the world who needs it. So please become a monthly donor. Go to MormonStories.org, click on the donate button, become a monthly donor. And our promise to you is financial transparency, a mission of providing healing and growth and support for people who need it within high demand religions and Mormonism. And we'll keep doing this for as long as you'll support us. And we'll use every dollar. We'll be as responsible as we can with every dollar you give, that it goes towards the mission that we tell you it will. So please support us if you can. There are other ways to support us. Subscribing and following us here on YouTube right now, subscribing and following us. Also on Facebook, subscribing and following the Facebook page, following us on TikTok, Mormon Stories Podcast, Instagram, Twitter, liking our stuff, and then sharing it with whoever you feel safe sharing it with. Also, we really need people to give us positive reviews on Apple Podcasts. We've had a lot of haters give us 1-star reviews just to kind of bring down our review score. These people don't even listen to or watch the podcast. So if you can take the time to go to Apple Podcasts or Spotify and give us a positive review, it will really help make people feel safe that they can listen to the show, because we don't want to be an echo chamber. And with Jen and Gerardo and others, we want to keep Mormon Stories constructive, positive. We're not about tearing down the church. We're about helping the Mormon church get healthier, but also we're about helping people live big, beautiful lives in or out of the church. So that's my plea. Anything you want to add, Jen?
No, just if you can donate, do. If you can't, leave the reviews, and even just a small, tiny donation every month helps.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be a big donation.
Yeah. All right. Be good to each other. Be kind to each other. We love you guys. And we look forward to seeing you again soon on another episode of Mormon Stories Podcast. Take care, everybody.